Sutton Conservation Commission, December 20th, 2017. First up, 31 Carrier Lane. Purpose of this, Sutton Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, December 20th, 2017 at 7 p.m. The Sutton Town Hall, 4 Uxbridge Road, Sutton, Mass. Purpose of this hearing is to review a notice of intent submitted to the Conservation Commission by Michael Kuchar, Sutton, Mass. Project consists of construction of a 192 square foot addition for the existing single-family home with associated grading and utilities on map 53's parcels 29 on 31 Carrier Lane, Sutton, Mass. Welcome.
Thank you. Paul Hutnack with Andrews Survey and Engineering for the record. I'm going to just hand out a few things. And I'll begin my conversation. It's actually a little slightly long. So, if the commission recalls, everyone except for Mr. Tuck was here last time, and we spoke about several topics for this project.
And that wasn't a public hearing, that was just an informal discussion, is that correct?
No, it was a public hearing.
Yes, notice of intent.
Notice of intent,
They
okay.
opened up the last time.
Okay.
So, I had received that day an email from Brandon.
Yep.
And I went through that and we discussed those topics. I could just briefly go through those again and say, talk about what we talked about then and what I've done to address those topics. So,
Let me hold you up there a second, Paul. Bob Teff was not at the last meeting, so you should put it on the record whether or not he has reviewed the minutes and video or anything else so he can vote.
I have not reviewed the video. I was not able to access it.
Okay, so that means, Mr. Teft, if you do vote tonight, he will not be able to participate. But you can still
Discuss
You can
it.
talk.
You can still discuss and talk, absolutely.
okay. So, of those comments, I feel like we addressed most of them during the conversation, and I formalized on the plan. The first of which was that we're within 25 feet of the water line. And as you can see on the plan here, this is the water line that we had shot. And the edge of the addition is 22.5 feet away. So what we had discussed that would be conditioned at that meeting was that we would not have, basically this is on sonotubes if you recall, that we would not have any sonotubes, so any structural parts of the addition within 25 feet of the pond. Another thing that we talked about was 470.15 was an elevation that Brandon brought up that he has been given in the past. So we kinda had some back and forth in emails that I think you guys were copied on about shooting the dam maybe, or trying to figure out how to figure out that elevation, if you will. So really what we thought was the best thing to do was to put our site on the data, the 1988 NGVD 88 datum, which if they had done any study anytime recently, that's what they should be on.
Yeah, wasn't reality in the 300s?
Yeah,
right.
previously you said?
Yeah, right,
Yep.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, previously, the plan was, it had 300 shown.
right, correct.
Yeah.
Which, because this is a zone A, is, the elevation isn't necessarily relevant in that it's not an AE, so that we would be on an AE would be a flood zone designated by FEMA that has an elevation.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's an AE, then I would be standing here telling you exactly what that was, and we'd be able to go about it that way. What I did is, and what we often do, is to show the line to the best of our ability, and Brandon thought, well, why don't we do a little better check than that? He had a number that was given to him from the previous DPW director. So we went ahead and put the site on 88. And in fact, just as a check for me, I actually checked it the GIS map, it's my understanding that the GIS map is pretty accurate in terms of, it was based on overall flight of the town. And if you look at the GIS map, right around where the structure is, right here, you can see the structure right here under the 29, map 29. You have a 476 contour on the bottom side of it and a 478 on the top side of it. And that is literally what we have. We have a 476 and a 478. And down near the water's 472 and 470. So in terms of their zone A and us being tied into 88, just as a check, I thought that was a good check. So also on top of that, where the existing finished floor elevation is 479.19. So we're 9 feet above basically with the finished floor where that elevation is.
That
That's-
elevation is the flood.
Well, that's what Brandon was given by the previous DPW
Yeah, I was
guy.
given 470.15.
Right.
Okay.
What do you think of that? What'd you get? Did you go and survey the top of the dam?
No, we did not, because that's not really a flood study, nor were we trying to complete a flood study. That's why I got on this datum to use that number.
Mhm.
Say they did it in 29, there's two datums basically, there's 29 and then there was 88.
Mhm.
29 is like a foot higher, so even say it was based on that, we're still 8 feet above it. It's a significant distance that our finished floor elevation, which is what we're getting at,
Yeah,
Would
yeah,
be-
exactly.
would be above that elevation. So, and anecdotally, if you will, Mr. Kuchu, who owns the property and has owned it, has never seen it. Have you even seen it get to the retaining wall even?
No.
Which the bottom of the retaining wall is 472. So, that's anecdotal, I realize, but I mean, I think they
Right,
control
so-
the elevation of the, as we discussed, they basically remove flashboards as storms are coming, so.
Right. There's no need to even think about above the top flashboard, which according to Mark Brigham told me years ago that they have 470.15, and that, based on what you have here, it lines up. 472 is more or less at the stone wall. You go down another 2 feet, you're probably at the edge of the water.
Yeah, I agree. I think, I don't have a spot shot, but that very well could be like a 470 contour right there.
Okay.
So, it's in I think this was shot in 9/29/14, so if it's before they lowered the water, it's in the fall, it's probably near the top of the flashboard, just as a,
Mhm.
that's most likely. I don't know for sure, I didn't see it that day, but it would seem to make sense that everything between the GIS and this datum and what Brandon has for info are kind of lining up. So that's how I tried to, address that issue. Then also, just as some quick things that we actually talked about conditioning, but since I was putting this on the datum, I did change the erosion control barrier detail to be the 12-inch biodegradable. And I also changed where it is shown on the plan so that the limit of disturbance is basically, property line to property line, if you will. And then, that was pretty much it. It was just about the well and the septic system, which we talked about. It's a cesspool and it shares a well. And his son owns this lot, so in terms of getting materials down, not a problem. And one last thing was that, I did add to this plan, another thing we're gonna condition, but I added it anyways, was a stone drip edge as well, for the roof runoff on the gable ends by the drip edge end, basically. So that was really it.
This is an enclosed
Um,
deck. It's not a deck. It's got a
don't know.
roof over the top of it and everything else. May even have screens and sliding windows on it.
I don't know, I didn't ask that.
Sorry, but
I've got that.
He would-
I'll
he
have my
would-
turn, I guess.
I would expect nothing less, but.
You have anything, Brandon?
Right, so, sonotubes are gonna be 5 feet, well, up at the 25-foot mark, you say.
Correct.
So a little bit of that addition's gonna cantilever out
Cantilever, yes.
over it.
Yep.
But you can't see that on the plan, so how is the contractor gonna know that?
Well, what we talked about was just conditioning and that.
The problem is that contractors don't read, they're looking at the plan more than anything. And maybe it'll come out in the pre-construction meeting.
Yeah, I would
But-
certainly say that.
If it's not in the plan, the probability of that being missed goes up, in my opinion, exponentially. That's my only comment.
Had to redesign.
Well, I just would add a note that there'd be no sonotubes, no
Right.
structure within 25 feet.
And from the commission's position, you're gonna be allowing a structure closer than 25 feet. I touched on this last time. I think that it'd be very important for the commission to outline the reasons why you're gonna allow this variance from the policy, because this commission has been very consistent about 25-foot no-touch zones. And if you're gonna do it for one, you can do it for all, but if you give some kind of rationale on this for the variance, and we can put it down in the order of conditions, then, it serves as a placeholder for anybody else who wants to come and do the same thing. You can say, well, hold up, we had rationale for that. Okay?
And we'll discuss what that was later. Anybody else here to speak on this 31 Carrier Lane? Bob, you get your turn now.
Apparently, there's no way of taking it back to 25 feet off the water.
No, it would just be,
I mean, it's only 2.5 feet.
well, yeah, but we're talking about a 12-foot wide addition already, so you're talking 9.5 feet. It's just not feasible to
No,
build it
no.
and make it work at that point.
This addition that's shown here, it's not a deck, it's an enclosed,
It's an enclosed room that sits on piers, basically,
So-
which actually, the house that's there now actually sits on
Yeah,
piers as well.
but in all intents and purposes, it's not a deck, it's not a porch, it's an addition to the house with roof on it, gutters, siding, insulation. What's the window situation?
The window situation?
Well, I assume there's windows in this, isn't there?
Yeah.
You wanna look out at the lake, and I mean, is there gonna be sliders?
It's gonna be up and down windows.
Yeah, but it's gonna be-
It's not gonna be cranked out, just.
A 3-season porch is what he's more defining it as. But I don't think it's not is it heated?
The camp's only 3 seasons camp, so I mean, that's why it's not, the next owner very well may heat it and make it.
Sure, yeah, right, yeah.
You know, so- We can't
say when
condition
we do
that,
right.
and, so I can't vote on this anyhow, so, but all I can point out is that, this is not the porch, this is an addition
Yeah.
that's going on in the house.
What it was described as.
And, that's well within it's inside that 25-foot buffer.
Yep.
Yeah,
And
at
there
the
is some-
last meeting, Bob, the commission didn't raise too many concerns about that.
And just for my information, how did the Boston grades come about?
How did the what?
Boston grades come about?
There was no busting grades, it's just we were on assumed datum, because when you have a zone A on a flood map, they don't give you an elevation, so it's, the elevation datum that you're on is irrelevant. But then Brandon at the meeting brought up an elevation that he had that I
All right,
wasn't
so
aware of.
it was just assumed,
Right,
so
yeah, which
that-
we
okay.
often do unless we need to do.
and, all right.
We brought a GPS unit out here basically and put it on the datum to be able to, use his elevation.
Yeah,
And you
No,
used
yeah.
what, 29?
88.
You used 88.
Yep. But again, even if it's
That's-
29, it's still.
Right, but it's above mean sea level.
Yeah,
So
yes,
this house is about 477 feet above sea level.
correct, yeah.
and, again, no paraphrase. Would that be something that would normally be noted in the drawing, that the elevations were based on assumed data versus the actual?
So normally what we would do, which I did do on this one, is note that the elevations shown on plan are NGBD 88. So if we're on a specific datum, then we typically list that. If it's assumed, I mean, maybe we will, but it's not it's not necessary necessarily. It's more if you are on something, then you wanna say what that is. Like, 'cause sometimes you're on a datum, Worcester Sewer's datum is a foot off of 29, so it's really confusing, so you wanna make sure you specify. But if you're on some assumed datum that nobody could hook onto except you, then it's really less relevant.
Yeah, in some respects, it is, yeah. It's just, as it ties to the butter's property and stuff like that, it becomes more relevant or more confusing than the other. That's all I got. And, well, other than the fact that your stone drip edges are just, what's the detail on that?
It's basically just specified on the side, it's 3/4 inch stone, a foot wide, 6 inches deep. And it's basically labeled as such.
And it's following the topography of the land, so it's just,
Yeah, it's pretty
Right.
flat in there, yeah.
well, it's no flatter than anything else, it's just running towards the lake.
Yeah, that is true, it's flatter than the rest of the lot.
My last comment is, Paul, you gotta get these revised plans to me before 3:30 the night of the hearing.
Understood.
Cause, you know, I gotta review it, I know Bob likes to review them ahead of time, so please.
It was not a tall task, but a hard task to get the datum information and get it on that, so I did it as fast as I could.
Yeah, well, when you're, you know, proposing an addition just a few feet away from the approximate A zone,
I'm not saying it wasn't relevant, I'm just,
relevant.
you know, saying that's why it took a while. 2 weeks sounds like a while until you gotta schedule everything
No.
and get.
That's why we ask if you're gonna be ready and say
Yeah,
you could
well,
put it
I
out 2
was,
more
but
weeks.
It's just
No,
that I
you
wasn't
weren't.
ready in a week, I was ready in 2 weeks. You asked me in 2 weeks.
We ask for the drawings in a week ahead of time. Joyce?
Are these stairs over here?
Yes.
And they're made of what?
Wood,
Wood?
wooden stairs.
Stairs to the water, or?
No.
Right here.
Yeah, that's gonna, well,
Yeah.
it'll probably be
Off the door.
composite stuff.
Like Trex
Yeah,
stuff.
like Trex,
And they're 25 feet away.
or they're more than that.
Yes, I don't know exactly what, but if we're 22 feet something to here, I mean, this is, you know, even half of that is another 6 feet, so, yeah.
And just to reiterate, how are all the materials getting down there again?
Well, there's a path through here that they can go, and, Mr. Kuchar's son owns the abutting property, so if we need to, you know, straddle the line, so to speak, then that's not a problem.
We don't need to like go around with equipment.
No,
Yeah, I mean, at best, we need a mini down here or something for the sonotubes, so.
I can come in off the other the other ladies,
Oh, you can also come in off of the
I just
side if
gotta-
need be.
remove her fence, and if there was a machine that had to get in there, but we're not using machines.
Okay.
We're gonna hand dig the sonotubes and hand carry everything down from Corey's
Yep,
parking lot.
from both this side.
Andy?
Brandon had touched upon why we were giving relief to that 25-foot setback. And in my eyes, it would be because the sonotubes are greater than 25 feet. Didn't we have a deck built that was closer than 25 feet?
Yes.
So in my eyes, this falls under the same category, even though it's an enclosed room.
They had a deck they wanted to build, and we said they couldn't do it.
Well, I think it ended up, didn't it, that one?
It hasn't been approved
I
yet.
don't remember this commission allowing any structure within 25 feet.
Even a deck.
Yeah,
Where's
even
this
a deck,
at?
that's been like a verboten area.
Didn't even let the police department do it.
Yeah, right, so, I mean, this is the first time I've seen that. But the last time, I think what happened was the commission said, well, it's already lawn. Keep the sonotube, keep the physical disturbance of the land at least 25 feet away. So I'm guessing that what you're gonna have to do going forward, if you're gonna be fair to everyone, that they would just have to have a situation where you have existing lawn, no vegetation needs to come down, and you'd have to cantilever anything you have beyond the 25-foot mark. Now,
One of the,
is that something you want to do?
yeah, one of the other pieces that was, I think, very important to me is the existing house is less than 500 square feet, which is below the minimum livable area of a house you could build now. So, some rationale would be, yeah, it's just too small to begin with. And they, if you could use the extra space.
I think you'd be challenged to find this situation again. I think this is pretty unique, personally.
Till next week.
Till somebody decides they wanna put a McMansion there.
Well, they can't, they have to ask you.
Yeah.
You're gonna say no.
And
I'll
just,
be dead if that happens.
Yeah, me too.
Keep the columns
My
25
son's
feet, I
getting
was
it
fine
after
with.
I die
Yeah,
anyway,
right.
so it doesn't matter. He's knocking it down. I'll be putting an addition on his house.
Anything else?
you're done, Brandon?
Yes.
Yep. Done.
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
All those in favor?
Aye. Make a motion to order an issue of conditions for 31 Carrier Lane.
With the rationale of,
The rationale of that disturbance was allowed within 25 feet because the lolly columns are, not lolly columns, the
sauna.
sonotubes are 25 feet off, and to make the house usable or livable by size. And we wanted something on the plan, I believe, didn't we? Did we want something on the plan?
Maybe
Need to,
Make sure that that's clearly stated on
Yeah.
the plan, the
Picture that
25 foot.
detail, and that would help us in the future if we had somebody else come back, I think, and ask that.
So how about those two things, you know, the sonotubes equal or greater than 25 feet away, need the livable size. I'd also say that it's also existing lawn with no vegetation.
Also existing lawn with no vegetation.
Yeah, and what was the last thing?
Want it put clear on the plan so when the contractor starts, those sonotubes don't go any closer than 25 feet.
So they'd have to, you can close, but it'd be contingent upon a plan revision.
Yeah,
That right,
that's
Paul?
fine, yeah.
Is that it? Second?
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right,
Thanks
thanks
for
very
coming.
much,
Thank
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a good one. Good luck with it.
Is it stamped?
This is all right.
Everybody have a great Christmas.
You too.
Take care now.
Happy
Not
New
the
Year.
same, the details are different.
Stamp a couple of these.
47 Carrier Lane is
Stamp of this,
asking
no
for
heading.
extent,
Okay, this is the new one.
continuation
So
to,
right now, or what do you do?
No,
Information
it
on
has
that,
to
Mr.
stay in,
Chairman.
cause it's the original.
no,
Do you write
Come to find
NG, or
out,
do you see revised,
I go
or?
by
The notice of intent was never sent
by
to
the
DEP,
dates,
Yeah.
and then I keep the
so
original.
they
and
don't even
final.
know it exists.
Anything in between gets
So-
lost.
So there's no way to move forward, they don't even
Yeah.
have a DEP number.
so they're looking to continue to January 17th, 2018 at 7:05.
Before we continue them, are they gonna be ready, Wanda? Have we had any correspondence with them?
Well, no, you can't vote on it.
It is a month out, I guess, right?
Yeah, yeah, they asked for a month.
Make a motion to continue 47 Carrier Lane to 7:05 PM, January 17th, 2018.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Who did the second?
And
Andy,
It's my job.
this is closed.
We did it for a long time.
is the 11 Pleasant Valley Road a new NOI,
It
Wanda?
is. That's right, yes.
Yeah, I know, but so did the first one.
Yeah, the first one was new, so you can get away with doing, I think you can waive it, but
Not this one.
You already read it in last
you
time.
read
All
it,
right.
so.
Make a motion to waive the reading of 11 Pleasant Valley Road.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Welcome.
Good evening, Arthur Allen from Ecotech Incorporated, wetland scientist, Pat Doherty, PE, project engineer is with me tonight. We have the certificates of mailing for Wanda. And I delineated the wetlands on this project site again at 11 Pleasant Valley Road, the corner of Boston Road and Pleasant Valley Road, basically to the west or northwest of the Pleasant Valley crossing and associated with the plaza development. So I redelineated the wetlands on this parcel. I originally delineated them associated with the plaza development, because as you remember, we created an access road off Boston Road to cross the stream. Resources present include the stream here running through the former soccer field. So this has been a historically mowed and maintained area right up to the banks of the stream on both sides. There's a swath of bordering vegetated wetland based on hydric soils adjacent to the stream and then the stream bank itself. The stream is mapped as perennial on the current USGS map. That presumption was overcome when we did the permitting for Pleasant Valley Crossing, and actually that order has been continued. It's still in effect. We're still maintaining that this is an intermittent stream. It's known to dry up for extended periods every summer. Basically, this watershed comes down along Route 146 through a series of dilapidated ponds, former mill ponds, and then down onto a sand and gravel outwash somewhere in the vicinity of Boston Road, Pleasant Valley Road, and essentially the flow just percolates to the ground before it hits Pleasant Valley Road. So again, we're moving forward on the basis that we have an intermittent stream projecting a 100-foot buffer zone off the adjacent bordering vegetated wetlands. So we're proposing here a two-building commercial project with associated parking, stormwater actually being done underneath the pavement, and talking about a little more detail on that. But we have we're maintaining a 25-foot setback, except for the stormwater outfall. So in order to daylight the stormwater system, we have to do an outfall down into this area. So that's the only incursion into the 25 is for the stormwater, most of which would just be returned to grass after the construction of the project. So we have mitigation for the project for work in the buffer zone. We have extensive open space, essentially the 25-foot on our side, plus the entire parcel out to Boston Road on the other side of the stream will all be preserved open space. And there's a significant open space component around the project and associated with the larger plaza. We also have a fairly robust planting plan with native trees and shrubs, and Pat's called for a native wildflower seed mix to be planted along the edge of grading just outside the 25-foot on the stream side of the parking lot. So, quick overview. Pat, if you want to touch on stormwater?
Sure. I'll just kind of back up a little bit on it. So we're here for 11 Pleasant Valley Road, which is the soccer field, which Art had just discussed. We're calling it kind of an expansion of the Pleasant Valley Crossing Shopping Center. If you go through the kind of history of the project, back in I think 2005 or 2006, a notice of intent was submitted that included what's been partially constructed for the Pleasant Valley Crossing Shopping Center. It included the property at the intersection of Route 146 and Pleasant Valley Road, and it included the soccer field. Did not include Gerard's Pond. So as part of the shopping center that's been constructed, we asked for a modification to that order of conditions. And what it essentially did is it removed the two parcels along Pleasant Valley Road, and it included Gerard's Pond. So back then, I believe Art had discussed, from Pleasant Valley Road to Cold Spring Brook, the water course was determined to be intermittent. no determination had been made upstream of it. So we're here now discussing 11 Pleasant Valley Road, which is the soccer field project. So we're calling it an expansion of the Pleasant Valley Crossing Shopping Center. We're going to access the property from Pleasant Valley Road. We're going to get some of the utilities from the shopping center, including the water and the sewer. We'll get a new electric service and a new gas service from Pleasant Valley Road. And the stormwater system is completely independent of that, of the Pleasant Valley Crossing Shopping Center. We discussed at length, the infiltration pond back there, and we thought it was prudent to keep it separate. Because, the feeling is that the infiltration rate on that pond might be a little bit slower than was originally thought. So the property is about 4.16 acres. Besides this board, we've also submitted a permit to the planning board, which is still in process. We submitted a request for a special permit from the ZBA for a couple of uses, including restaurant use and medical use to the ZBA. That's been approved by the ZBA, and we also asked for a withdrawal permit, or actually a usage permit from the Wilkinsonville Water District to allow the water usage for the proposed uses, and that's been approved as well. The planning board, we're on their agenda for the site plan review. We're modifying the special permit for the overlay district of the shopping center. We are in a groundwater protection area, so we're on their agenda for a special permit associated with the zoning regs for the overlay district.
Does that mean you're treating the first full inch?
We're treating first full inch, and then also, for the DEP regs, we need to pre-treat before any recharge occurs. We're also on the agenda for a couple other uses with the planning board for special permit, including retail use. So the project involves construction of two buildings. One would be 5,500 square feet, would be a standalone restaurant. There'd be some outdoor seating associated with the restaurant. The second building would be a multi-tenant building. Right now, and we've discussed it with the planning board, some of the lease tenants are speculative. We do have a lease in place with one medical use of the building, which is about 6,800 square feet. And we believe that the remainder of the building would be retail and a small restaurant. Parking requirements for these uses require 169 parking spaces, and we're proposing 198 parking spaces. The two lines that we're showing here are the one closest to the brook is the 25-foot no disturb zone, and then the further one out is the 100-foot, I guess, buffer or adjacent upland resource area according to the town's bylaw. So we're not proposing any work, permanent work, but for an upfall within the 25-foot no disturb zone. We are required to do the outfall grade at the lowest point of the site, obviously, that's close to the wetland. The topo of the site is such that we couldn't pull this outfall further closer towards the development and let it drain by gravity. It's just that this brook is at about the existing grade, and there's just not enough, without filling the site by tens of feet, there'd be no way to pull that discharge any closer or outside of the no disturbance zone. We've designed a stormwater management system that complies with both the groundwater standards here in the bylaw and the DEP stormwater manual. Basically, it requires pre-treatment before discharge to the ground, and also pre-treatment before discharge into the water course. So what we're doing is we're capturing the parking lot runoff in catch basins, deep sumps, and hoods. That will flow through an oil water separator. It'll flow to an underground chamber system. The chamber system is a StormTech system, and what we've shown in the plans is an isolator row, which is basically a filter fabric underneath the first chamber, so the stormwater would go into that chamber and percolate and distribute through the system itself. I believe we were at about 80% TSS removal before the underground recharge, and then, you know, in total, I think we're up over 90% TSS before discharge into the water course. The plans have been reviewed. We've gotten some initial comments from planning board's consultant, and there's a couple of what I think are minor changes to what's proposed. We felt it prudent to hear from this commission and get Brandon's comments before we put a full revision together and got back to, you know, both boards. We also received, I think, one comment from DEP when they issued the DEP file number. The DEP's comment was we had left out, I think, a sheet in the stormwater management report that included some volume numbers. You know, it was just an oversight. You know, the calculations had been done but hadn't been included, you know, collated into the system. So we also, in response to the town's consultant, there's two changes in the 100-foot adjacent upland review area. We're showing a 20-foot in-only driveway from the main driveway access. We had originally designed that and shown templates for the fire truck and for the medical user, the known users. You know, because the retail tenants are unknown and the restaurant felt that it's important to allow for a larger semi-trailer to access it well. Our templates show that with a 24-foot wide driveway, a larger vehicle could get through there. So that the truck route for the large vehicles would come down behind the multi-tenant building, and you can turn back up and exit of the driveway onto what's called Galaxy Pass. The other comment we received is the dumpster enclosure closest to the water course. It's hard to access. There's 40 feet from the gates to the building, but it would be an odd movement. So we've slid this dumpster enclosure closer to the no disturbance line, but still, we're still, you know, probably at least 30 feet from the water course. So, you know, with that, you know, I'd like to entertain any questions or comments you have on the application. And
have you seen these drawings yet, Bob?
Yeah, we did receive some initial comments from Brandon and.
The original drawings, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know if you wanna.
So those are
go through
newer than the plan set you
No,
submitted?
what you're seeing here is the plan set that's submitted. There's two changes that we haven't resubmitted, but, you know, I have worked out, you know, and not resubmitted, and that would be widening this driveway and shifting the dumpster enclosure.
So we will be seeking a continuation, but we're just,
Right.
we're dealing with the original plans.
Okay, I have 7 comments to go through. The biggest and most important, the elephant in the room that we really need to either clear out or let sit down, is the issue of the stream, whether or not it's perennial or intermittent. You were saying, Pat, that this section of the stream was okayed by the previous Conservation Commission with PVC Phase 1. All right? I'm not so sure of that. They might have said it. How legal it is, I don't think is very legal, because the Wetlands Protection Act is a property-based law.
Yeah, not to interrupt, but that's kind of some background information. In the NOI, we provided the documentation as well. I don't know that I mentioned it. In the Wetlands Protection Act, in order to make a determination whether or not a stream is perennial or intermittent, you need documentation that doesn't flow for 4 days during a consecutive 12-month period. So as part of the NOI that we submitted, I had documented more than 4 days that there was no flow conditions in the stream there. I know that, you know, from the past working on the site, and I think that Brandon, you've witnessed as well, every year it dries up. It wasn't just this one occurrence. The original order of condition, not the modified one, the one that was issued in 2007, had included this property, and at that time it was deemed an intermittent stream, and that was kind of more background information, whether or not it's still in force or not, I guess. you know, it doesn't really matter at this point because we've submitted the proper documentation, as part of this application.
Well, that brings up other issues. If you could take care of it, because this was already parlayed into the phase one, then it would be a moot point.
Mhm.
But I was looking at the order of conditions for, you know, phase one here, and I was looking at what parcels this applies to, and it's map 11 and all these parcels. If you go to the map, the old soccer field is map 10. So it's not even mentioned in the phase one
The
order of
modified
conditions.
order, yeah,
The modified order.
The 2007 order of conditions did include that parcel.
Right, and the
That was the
2007 is now moot. We now have a amended.
Sure.
And it doesn't include, you know, this parcel.
Right, and, you know, as I explained in there, you know, in our October memo that I submitted with the NOI, you know, this was, you know, we had done the documentation to confirm the prior decision as well as provide the documentation for this current application, so.
My recommendation to this commission is to treat this as a separate issue. It's not part of any current order of conditions for the phase one property. It's a separate parcel that needs to be looked at separately. So, you know, you can't just say that it's already been determined because this is part of the other application and the other properties, because it's not. So what they did is they took 4 days worth of pictures of the stream being dry, and I absolutely agree that the stream runs dry every single year. And that they also have a change in designation from perennial to intermittent right over the line, you know, right here, okay? But that doesn't mean that the commission has to be beholden to what was done over here. You need to make you have the right to make your own independent assessment and determination.
If they're documenting that it is dry,
Well, there are caveats to it.
okay,
So
I knew there had to be something else.
there are caveats. Number one, it has to be done in a non-drought year.
Mhm.
2017 thus far has been the time that they took the pictures was in a non-drought period.
Mhm.
So that's okay.
Yep.
But then there's another, 2 more provisions. One was that the stream cannot be quote-unquote significantly drawn down by withdrawals from wells or other kinds of withdrawals, direct withdrawals. We have the water district, Wilkinsonville? Yeah, Wilkinsonville on the other side of the river. I think that's far enough away that
Yep.
shouldn't be an issue.
The river's actually outside the zone too for that.
Right, so we're outside the zone too, so I don't think that's an issue. But what is an issue, in which, something that Pat wrote a small thesis on, has to do with the fact that you cannot have any quote-unquote significant upgradient impoundments. Because if you have an impoundment upstream, then the impoundment holds back water, and it would be perennial if not for the impoundment, you know? So we have a number of impoundments upstream. We have Aldrich Pond, we have Marble Pond. So, you know, that's, the commission has to weigh that in your decision. I called up Jack Sheehan, asked him what was the rationale back in the aughts when you originally,
07.
yeah, 07, and I said, what were you thinking about with these upstream impoundments? He says, well, you know, Aldrich Pond and Marble Pond are pretty much static. They're not, the dams aren't really holding back anything. The dam at Aldrich Pond is defunct, and the water just sits there, you know, anyway.
Mhm.
And that was their rationale.
Yep.
So that's the information I got. But you make whatever decision you want. The other thing that comes into play, again, this is a property-based law, so you can change the designation here, but we still don't have a designation change request for this property because it's off-site. It's on the other side of Pleasant Valley Road. It's owned by others. So if you want to get technical about it, there will still be a 200-foot semicircle off of this section of stream.
Well, I disagree with that, yes, but, you know, the definition says where a stream becomes perennial, the radius is not where it no longer becomes perennial. And also, if a perennial stream enters a culvert, it's perpendicular, so I would think it would be perpendicular.
Well, the culvert has to be more than 200 feet long to lose it.
There's no mention of where a perennial stream no longer becomes perennial if there's a radius.
Well, it would, let's say the commission agrees with you on this parcel. So that means that this section right here will become intermittent. But it's still perennial on this side because it's not part of the subject parcel. It's owned by others, and it's still a blue line. That being said, you can ask for permission from that landowner. It's easy enough to get pictures. You might already have them from Pleasant Valley Road. But the commission cannot make a determination on the extent or types of resource areas on someone else's land in which request has not been made.
I don't think that they would need to because of those two things. You know, it's clearly stated in the WPA that we're at the beginning of the perennial stream, you have the 200-foot radius, and there's no mention where a perennial stream becomes intermittent, what happens. I would, you know, defer to more of the culvert definition, because that's the end of the perennial stream, it would be perpendicular rather than a radius. You know, that might be my opinion, but we could look into that.
The culvert has to be more than 200 feet long.
Right, I'm just stating that there's nothing in the Wetland Protection Act that says that there's a radius where a perennial stream becomes intermittent. It's the other way around, where it begins to become perennial.
But this whole stretch is a blue line.
Mm-hmm.
This whole stretch of stream is a blue line.
Right, and at the Aldridge Pond where it begins, you know, there would be a 200-foot radius there.
Right, going into the pond. So Aldridge Pond, for example, that has more. It's more of a pond than a river. Okay, it's more flat water than flowing water. So you could say at the inlet and the outlet is the perennial stream, and everything in between is a pond. Okay, there would be a semicircle of 200 feet going into the pond in either direction. Here, it would be intermittent for this section right here, which you've been asking, you know, getting the 4 days worth of pictures, but it stops at the property line. Stops right there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? On this side, there's no determination, so it's presumed to be perennial.
Right. But there's nothing in the act that says that there's a radius from that point where it stops.
Yeah, there is.
This is where
There's a 180-degree circle around it.
we can go through that. That wasn't a question I received before the meeting, so I didn't, you know, document it, but I can provide additional information since this is gonna be continued on why we feel that it would be perpendicular
Okay.
from it.
Fair enough.
I did take some photos and I sent them via email to you. I didn't do a full documentation of the site. I did, however, you know, document on the other side of Pleasant Valley Road. I didn't go further up. You know, I have some pictures here. Again, I can send it more formal in between, you know, now and the next meeting. I also walked, you know, the entire brook up to Aldridge Pond because, you know, it was clearly dry here where for some time there was still some flow going, and I was wondering what was going on. You know, my findings just before the culvert, probably, you know, 50 feet or so back, it was dry on the other side of Pleasant Valley Road, but there was always some ponding or a little bit trickle of water in the brook beyond that, or for some period of time. So what I found up at Aldrich Pond, and I've got some photos I can send in right here. That Aldrich Pond was created at some point by creating a stone and earthen berm. It's got two spillways. One appears to have been abandoned years ago and you know, directs water back into the channel downstream of the second spillway. So the one spillway that's still remaining has collapsed, so it's no longer functioning as a spillway. That water level is probably pretty close to you know, the old natural terrain. You know, that might be impounding a foot, but it's not. There's no way to control that right now. So upstream of Aldrich Pond, there's a man-made canal that leads to an old, I guess it was a mill or some type
Yeah.
of a.
44 Marble Road.
Yeah, yeah. So that there's a canal that goes up to there. So it's man-made, it's lined. That there is a structure left there, however, the controlling structure left there, the building's gone, and there's no one operating flashboards or doing anything with that structure. Upstream of that is Marble Road, and there's a structure that discharges from Marble Pond under Marble Road to this little pond that we're talking about. That structure is also kind of in a failed condition. There would be no way to operate any flashboards on that pond. You know, in my thesis, as Brandon said, you know, I
Small,
looked
it was
back,
a small thesis.
I looked back as far as I could. You know, there's a website, historicaerials.com, that includes the old USGS maps, the old aerial photos. Aerial photos go back to 1938, I believe. USGS maps go back to 1880s or so. Marble Pond has always been shown on the USGS maps in Marble Road there, or at least as far back as the 1860s. I'm pretty sure that's in its natural condition. And that structure that was constructed to go underneath Marble Road was probably built in conjunction with the mill on Marble Road. None of them have been operated in recent time. You know, there's also a provision, you know, to go back on whether or not these are significant. In the Wetland Protection Act, and whenever they make changes or revisions to the act, they put together a preface, and there's an appendix B. And basically the standard for significant impoundments, you know, I also include in there, the department has retained the concept that the legislature meant to protect rivers that would flow throughout the year in their natural condition. Property owners cannot raise the flashboards or otherwise manipulate the water flowing long enough to claim a stream as independent and escape riverfront jurisdiction. Man-made changes in stream flows should be investigated when streams are predicted to flow perennial and are observed dry. However, the department has added the word significant to stress that the stream's apparent change in status must be directly rated, in most cases, proximate to the man-made structure. So, you know, whether or not the impoundments upstream are significant, I would say they're not actively being managed. Aldrich Pond controls are in a failed condition, and you know, no one's controlling or shutting off the stream during the month of August to slow down the river so that I could witness it being, you know, in no flow conditions. You know, as far as upstream, you know, like I mentioned to Brandon, I'll provide some more documentation. I did include in the email it being dry, you know, on the north side of Pleasant Valley Road. I don't know whether or not a radius would even matter, or would, you know, put us into Rivers Protection Act jurisdiction, but I can provide some
I think
further
it would.
documentation.
I think it would. I was just looking at the section of the regulations. 10.58 2A 3C reads, and this, I was talking about culverts greater than 200 feet in length, and it reads, where a river runs through a culvert more than 200 feet in length, the riverfront area stops at a perpendicular line at the upstream end of the culvert and resumes at the downstream end. So, in order for that line to be perpendicular and stop, the culvert has to be 200 feet in length. This is not 200 feet in length.
No, and I don't disagree with that. My claim is that where they reference when a radius is required, it is at the beginning of perennial stream, not when, at the end of the perennial stream.
All right, we're splitting hairs here, but we'll.
Well, I mean, that's.
We'll continue the conversation. Okay, so how about we move on?
Excuse me, you had a comment to make, sir?
Yeah, I do.
Identify yourself,
I
please.
own the property
Sir?
across the street at one.
Sir?
Your name and address.
126 Boston Road.
Thank you.
Right across the street from that area. Right.
Hold on, let me pull it down. This one right here?
That's right.
Okay.
And I very rarely see that stream dry. It may have been a couple of weeks during the summer. But that last storm we had, where there were several inches of rain, relatively short period, the road, actually, water was coming across that road. I've never seen so much water ever happen.
When you say that road, do you mean Pleasant Valley Road?
Yeah,
Or
Pleasant
both?
Valley Road.
Okay.
And there's a lot of new asphalt and everything that has been put in, and new catch basins right at the base of my stairs. And that cuts across, and then it doesn't show on that map. But where does that water flow? And is that also considered a wetlands where the catch basins empty out into the old soccer fields?
You know, it isn't a wetland now, well, I'd ask Art to answer that, but, basically there's another outfall,
Yeah.
maybe right around in here.
Because their catch basins come in from Dudley Road, there's quite a bit of water that runs down, and there's two catch basins up here, approximately here, and they had some problems with them. So they tried to fix it, it runs down here and then cuts across here, and then there's a new one here, there's one here, and then all of that water dumps into here.
Yeah, and then it just flows overland over to the.
Yeah, if I could, through the chair, the wetland is more extensive on the Boston Road side. It doesn't extend, at this point, doesn't extend up to those outfalls, but it may at some point. But regardless, that's proposed as part of the open space and not an area to be developed. So that water will, in perpetuity, continue to flow into the stream and be unimpeded.
Okay. Let's talk about previous disturbance, because what's normally done is the commission has a 25-foot no-touch policy, but the entire area between the wetland boundary and 100 feet is considered a resource area under the bylaw, and what they normally require is some form of mitigation for what would be agreed as to be called unavoidable alterations, okay? So I thought about this, and I said, well, they want to take up to 75 feet, but at the same time, this entire area used to be a soccer field, maintained in less than 5 years ago, which is a significant number under the bylaw. So what has been done, the commission hasn't required a person who, say, is building in a lawn area that doesn't need cut down any trees, that hasn't required them to provide any kind of mitigation besides, the stormwater mitigation they'd, be required to under the Wetlands Protection Act. So I see this as a previously disturbed area within 5 years that wouldn't necessarily require any kind of mitigation, like, planting of trees or shrubs or anything like that. Okay.
But it doesn't mean you can take those trees off your plate.
Or that we can develop the open space, right?
Correct.
All of which we're suggesting as mitigation.
Are you including the stuff across from the entrance to the shopping as mitigation?
Well, what was the question?
The existing road that goes into the shopping plaza.
Yes.
You've got that all green and some trees now on that
was-
side.
Yeah, that was just kind of to show what this.
The question was, are you gonna leave that as open space or not?
No, that would be
I thought you
developed
said that earlier.
Yeah, no. One thing that we are doing that I think I failed to mention, probably easier to see on this plan here. Because the permitting for the Pleasant Valley Crossing Shopping Center did not include the soccer field, which had a kind of weird property line. If you've driven into the center from Boston Road, you can see you gotta kind of swing left and then swing right. So part of the work and why we've included the 2 parcels in this application would be to realign a portion of that access road. You can see where the green space kind of widens out over here, so that, and this is what was previously approved in the order of conditions in the site plan approval. So we would be realigning that road, a bit, and it would be basically from where our driveway starts to where the second driveway is. Wouldn't be changing the bridge, wouldn't be changing the retaining walls or anything in the rear.
And Pat, if you look at the TV, are you proposing to leave this area in a natural state?
Yeah, and in one of my emails back back and forth to Brandon, it's not really our intent to do anything out there other than put a freestanding sign. So we could just let it grow in, but there's been some desire or some discussion on the area towards Gerard Pond that, if we knock that down, or knock down the brush every couple of years, it would be more of a wet meadow habitat that kind of desirable.
Well, anything better than a mowed habitat.
Yeah.
I personally have no problem with early successional habitat.
Right.
It's still habitat.
Yeah.
For certain kinds of animals. It doesn't have to grow into a red maple forest. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah. So I guess what we could either just leave that alone, or we could go in every couple of years and cut down the brush.
I don't see a problem with that. If they want to, just gonna put notes on the plan and then we put in the order of conditions. And if you let it go more than 5 years, that's gonna be a problem.
Makes your project look much nicer with the brush cleaned off, longer views better and everything else, so.
Yeah.
Well, we wouldn't be mowing it, so we wouldn't be maintaining it weekly.
No, I understand, but
Yeah,
keeping it
so,
clean
yeah,
and
so
short
it
makes it look a
definitely-
lot better than it does if
It
it's
would,
all
it would look
grown up.
better, the line of sight with making turns might be better, nothing in the way to be viewed. And it's just fine for a certain kind of wildlife, it's not gonna hurt anything. Okay. 25-foot no touch. As I said with the police station, if you have pavement right up to the edge of the 25 no touch, that's not very practical, because if immediately on the other side of the pavement you're not allowed to touch, what's gonna happen is a tree's gonna grow up right at the edge. And then the roots are gonna start cracking the pavement, and it's gonna become a problem. And then somebody's gonna wanna go in there and cut down the tree. But it's a no touch. So eventually what's gonna happen is that we're gonna get permission to do it, which makes the whole point of the 25-foot no touch, a lost cause. So my recommendation is to keep pavement 35 feet away, 30 feet away, have a 5-foot strip of grass, so you maintain a little bit of a buffer with any large woody tree growth. So my recommendation is to pull things back anywhere the pavement is right on the 25-foot no touch, pull it back another 5 feet so you have at least a 5-foot grass strip. And that's commensurate with what was done with the police station.
I responded to that through email as well. And I did check, truck turn templates and whatnot. The width of the pavement as you get behind the building is at its, I guess, minimum width to allow the truck access to the back. I believe it's about 330 feet long, the no-touch zone, in a section that's 30 foot on this side of the brook. We'd be within, not within the no touch line, but at within 5 feet of it. In most cases, you know, we're much greater than 10 feet. The entire north side, we're much greater than 10 feet. You know, so, you know, maybe we could, you know, be allowed to come right up to it here, but not further.
Humor me for a second. If you scale off of the intermittent stream on the bottom of the drawing,
Yeah.
it appears to be much more than 25 feet right there. The line appears to be wrong.
I was
No,
looking at that, it
no,
appears to be a
it's-
wetland
it's
around the
25
stream.
feet from the wetland now, so I'll show you the.
Oh, all right, so
Yeah,
wetland.
so
You
you
can see
can
it better over here.
Yeah,
Okay,
I got two different colors, they probably don't show up well.
okay, I can see
Yeah.
it now.
Yeah.
I couldn't see it before, I'm sorry. I was trying to help you out.
I have a question. Why can't you move that building over?
Well, we've got the parking lot in, you know, the parking spaces we feel are appropriate. And by shifting it even 5 or 6 feet, we're either gonna lose the sidewalk, which, you know, they don't want drive aisles for near parking spaces right up to the building, so you end up having to reduce the size of the building.
That would be great. Why don't we take that big building and put it where the other one is and take the little one and put it over there? Switch them.
You mean bring this one over here and put the?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Put it the other way.
well, we've been working with kind of site plan and the design requirements in the overlay district. And the way that we got to this configuration is that, you know, the multi-tenant building, which is deeper, and requires requires a deeper parking field. You know, with the 5,500 square foot standalone restaurant building, you know, you've got a lot more, you don't require as much depth. You know, if we were to shift this building here or turn it, you know, the size of the building is kind of, the size of the uses and the tenant spaces is kind of put us into the layout where we're at.
See where your building is right there?
Mm-hmm.
Remember that October storm a few years back?
Mhm.
When we had lots and lots and lots of rain? There were ducks and geese and everything swimming in there for the next week, right where your building is.
I have a question.
And that pond up above, Marble Pond, had a lot of beavers in it, and the water was very high there a couple of years ago, and it was flooding domies out in the cellar and everything. I think you need to move that building over, because that's gonna flood sometime. I've seen it.
I have a question.
Mhm.
How many parking spaces are you required to have under zoning ordinance for
Under
for what you're
zoning,
doing here?
yeah.
And what are you required to have and how many do you have?
We're required to have 169 and we're proposing 198. But it's not just the requirement for zoning. If you look at the Market 32, you know, we met the requirement for zoning there, but, you know, we have the temporary parking lot that we needed, you know, for the user, so.
Right,
Our
so-
feeling is that this is the appropriate number of spaces.
So we say 169 and you have 198,
Correct.
so you have 29 more than you need.
Is there an
Per
avoidance?
zoning calculations, but not per needing, you know, for actual use.
Did they do an avoidance and minimization statement?
They did, but now we're getting into the splitting hairs nitty gritty of, you know, asking some serious questions in the hearing. So, you know, I see that and I see that there's room to minimize. I know you might not wanna lose them, but, I mean,
There's room.
there's room and you'd still be able to meet zoning requirements
Or I
to
could-
pull it back
yeah,
a little bit and
I could look at, you know,
reconfigure.
moving this and maybe getting some more parking by going closer to some other places, you know, where we've got more than 5 feet.
Yeah, you know, again, the commission just gave the very first variance for the 25-foot one time ago, and the engineer was up here just saying that, you know, this is a very unique situation. Mr. Taft just said, yeah, until the next one. Come to find out, the next one is the very next hearing.
We're not asking for a variance on the 25-foot.
Well, you're asking kind of for a variance for the 100-foot.
Well, again, the practicality of it is you can't have the 25-foot right up against the edge of a building or even the edge of the parking lot. It causes practical problems going forward. With a building, you need at least a 10-foot strip to maintain around a foundation. With a parking lot, you need, I think a 5-foot strip is manageable. But you gotta have, you know, that extra 5 feet as a little bit of a buffer, so the woody vegetation doesn't encroach onto the the pavement can cause problems, that someone eventually wants to do work in, removal of trees or whatever in what is allegedly a no-touch zone. It makes the whole point of a no-touch zone moot, and like, why did we even bother? That's the way I see it.
I think he's got that.
Yeah.
Moving right along.
Okay, I got in touch with Jeff Walsh, who's doing the engineering review for planning board. He hasn't seen anything from you recently. His idea was that you might be waiting to see what happens with this perennial stream.
Well, we wanted to his biggest comments were stormwater.
Right.
The design of the system has all the water flowing into the recharge chamber, and then it would overflow into the brook. Because, the existing site is all grass, and it's hydrologic soils, there's very little flow going into the brook from the property, and we need to match that in the proposed conditions. So the system's very large. And what I had discussed with him, before we had submitted is that, for the infrequent storm events, 100-year storm, and less frequent, that I would have some ponding in the parking lot. And he was okay with that. My calculations showed a little bit more than he was comfortable with. So what I've done, I haven't resubmitted. I've taken a second look at that underground chamber system, and if we expand it slightly by one more row of chambers, and change the outlet slightly, we can get it so that the ponding is minimal in the parking lot. But that's all conditioned on how much pavement and whatnot you have, so.
The outlet up by the existing crossing?
No, the outlet of the underground.
Okay.
The structure,
Yeah.
and whether we have a wear plate or just a smaller pipe leaving the structure. So where we're at now is we added a row of chambers, and we've kind of simplified that outlet so that it's not a weir with different size holes. I think it's an 8-inch pipe, or 8-inch pipe with a reducer to the 12-inch pipe. We'll control all the storms and keep the parking lot ponding to a minimum.
Okay.
But, it's all dependent on how much pavement and whatnot you have going into there, so I didn't wanna, prepare it, submit it, have them review it, and then, change, add or decrease a little bit of impervious surface and have to have them review it all over again.
You still have the outlet, the riprap pad up by the edge of the brook. Is there any way that can get pulled back some?
The problem we're having is that it's very, very flat. So,
in fact, let me bring up a picture.
The outlet of the chamber system, is at the bottom of the chambers, and I'm at a 0.5% slope going towards the brook, and a 1/2 foot above, or I think just a 1/2 foot above the elevation of the brook. So, pulling it back would mean digging a channel. So yeah, we could move the outlet back, but we'd be, I guess, disturbing more, having permanent disturbance in more of it.
Or raising the site a foot.
Well, I mean, the brook is such that you would still be digging it up.
Yeah, but I'm saying,
Yeah.
to solve some of your problem, you raise the site a foot and your pitch increases and.
Yeah, but it wouldn't change the location of the pipe or, the channel.
Just raise the whole thing up a foot, in
You'd
theory.
have to go like 3 feet though to make a significant difference. That's would be another, it's 3 acres, so 1,600 cubic feet an acre, so it's, you get 4,500 cubic yards coming in just to, as a balance of 100 feet of pipe.
That might help your flooding conditions too.
No, I think that, the building's up high enough in the pavement.
I'm talking about your calculated flooding of the parking lot is what
Oh, yeah.
I'm referring to, not,
Yeah.
I don't blame you, I know what you're doing, I don't blame you for doing it, you're trying to decrease the amount of import as much as possible, because it costs money to bring material in.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that, but you don't wanna do it to,
And the other, it does fit in, the site grading is that, you know, we're at about the elevation of the existing road, it fits in with the site. You know, any foot that we brought in is just raising this site, you know, higher than the rest of the site, so, you know.
that's a balancing act, all things being considered, yeah.
Okay. All right, so that's up to you. Then last thing is, operation and maintenance plan. Was it included in the notice of intent?
Yeah, well, it's in the stormwater, I don't know if it was separate.
It's in, oh, so it's in the
stormwater
stormwater
manual.
portion. Is it gonna be similar to what you have with phase one?
Yeah, but no, I think we've requested, we didn't take credit for parking lot sweeping, as you know, so we've asked for the
That Mark Briggs wanted done weekly?
Yeah, we do, we don't have mechanical sweepers out there, but we have, you know, people going out with hand sweepers, you know, I think 3 times a week, to clean up, you know, any of the sand against the curbing and the litter and the you know, cigarette butts or whatever kind of trash end up near the buildings.
Okay.
So, you know, we've done that, we've had the, I think quarterly stormwater structure inspections, that we've been doing that have been similar.
I just thought of a name. This is the lessons learned from phase one. Has to do with trash from construction and also from buildings. And one of them you said is gonna be a restaurant. Yeah, it's on the other side, but paper and plastic has a way of blowing in the wind. There's a big problem behind Market 32, with construction debris and, some you know, plastic and whatnot. The solution to that was put up the fence, and I think it's been working very well.
I check it every time I go down there.
Yeah, that was a great solution, and I'm wondering if the commission wants to recommend something like this here, because they're, you know, the proximity to the brook and the wetland, and the fact that there is gonna be, you know, there's gonna be bags of whatever come out of these buildings.
Part of the difference over here though is while our neighbors and Dave Porters are out there, you know, it's at about the same grade, it's not a big giant slope that they weren't looking at, you know,
Plastic and paper fly in the wind too. Doesn't have to go downhill,
Right.
it's it's
Yeah,
gonna move.
we're not opposed to it, that's, but, you know, I think that
I personally, you know, for the lessons learned from phase one, I think that a fence, in this kind of situation is a good idea.
And then, you know, and if it's right at the edge of the curb or a foot back, then, you know, maybe that takes care of the 25
Maybe
foot.
within the 5-foot grass zone between the 25-foot, no touching the.
Well, no, that's what I mean, if we put it right at the 25 or right at the, you know, right at the back of the curb or a foot off the curb, you know, then we're not, less likely to be in the 25 foot.
I like that idea. Okay, those are my comments.
Anybody from the audience have anything to say on this?
How are they gonna make a determination?
Again, sir, your name?
Dan Robertson, 126
Thank you.
Boston Road. How are they gonna make a determination on whether or not that's intermittent? And whether or not the setback's 20 feet, 5 feet, or 100 feet?
We have a little bit of a standoff tonight, and it has to do with whether or not there's a semicircle around the stream right at this point here. So this is the old soccer field where they wanna put up the buildings right in this area, alright? So, Mr. Doherty is going to write another letter giving his rationale as to why the 200-foot zone associated with the river should go straight as opposed to in a semicircle. I have my ideas about it, he has his ideas about it, I'm gonna do my research, he's gonna do his research, and hopefully we can resolve
Come to the next meeting and you'll know.
differences. At this point, we're acting like, kinda like lawyers. But hopefully, we don't have to bring the lawyers in because they're the only ones who win.
Real quick. Public safety concern, which is number one. Is there any overhead wires going in between Pleasant Valley Road and that building?
We have proposed a new pole in what we propose isn't necessarily what National Grid does. We start and we send it to their engineers. I don't know if they're gonna bring power from, 146 or from Boston Road. But, to get power here, right now, everything else is coming in underground from 146 near the entrance.
Okay.
So there's no infrastructure near here, and I don't know that they would run new underground from that area. So it's likely coming in from Pleasant Valley Road, either from 146 overhead, or from Boston Road, overhead one pole, and then doing the drop.
Just from experience, front load dumpsters and garbage trucks and overhead wires and people in cars with kids don't work. So that's just my public safety
Okay.
thing. You'd want to address that. That one in the corner doesn't work either.
This one here?
Nope, the one on the, so that's gonna need to be slid closer to that 25-foot zone.
This one here.
Yeah.
That's when the two changes they had discussed were, this going from 20 to 24 feet, and this sliding, I think about 12 feet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter, just pointing it out.
Right,
Just-
right. No, I appreciate that. It's always good to get things fixed before it starts getting constructed.
Brian hit most of them.
Joyce?
I still think that building needs to go the other way.
You're gonna show your proposed sign location and foundation and lighting and everything else to it, so that we can see whether or not, or where it's gonna be in relation to everything else, because it will be in a buffer zone.
So proposed sign location, what else, Bob?
Yeah, the proposed sign is located, but I've gotta get the.
I mean, I don't see it on the drawing, that's all Pat. and I-
Yeah, no, it's shown here.
Okay,
I
I-
didn't talk about it, but,
Okay.
we do need to get some more detail on it, I agree.
Limit of work, the borrow required for the site, you're gonna get that from off-site?
Yes.
And are you going to utilize the vacant lot across the street for staging the job out of, stockpiling loam, staging equipment out of, or anything else?
I'm assuming, and we don't have a contractor on board.
I would
and
assume.
A lot of the times, I would assume that we're going to, at a minimum, use part of that across the street for a loan starting out.
That should be, I would think that would have to be, or should be identified within the work area, disturbance area,
Okay.
and, any appropriate erosion control included. The 25-foot zone that we've got there, is there a lot of grading in that?
No, there's no grading outside within the 25-foot zone.
Okay, so all your embankments are outside of that?
Yeah.
Okay. The dumpster pad location, I assume is gonna be contained within a curb or berm, and,
There's gonna be a fence around it.
but the water will drain out of that towards the catch basin and not sit there?
Yes.
Okay. In the past, we've become customary in situations like this to ask or request little wetland signs to be placed on the 25-foot line going down through there. I would think we'd be asking the same thing in this case here.
Every 50 feet or wherever there's a jog.
The construction entrance is gonna be where?
On the ENS control plan, I'm having it come off of Pleasant Valley Road where the existing driveway is today.
Okay. Snow storage?
They weren't on the original plans, that was another comment from Jeff. The areas I've identified are the area between Pleasant Valley Road and the parking lot. Pleasant Valley Road is higher than the site, so that would all drain towards the parking lot, and then in the larger islands as well.
Because we will not, or would not allow any snow storage within the 100-foot buffer zone.
Right.
That's not just the 25, but the 100-foot,
All right.
I think, unless somebody says
Yeah, but
I'm
the
wrong.
one area that, I guess from this side of the dumpster, there'd be some area that, you know, would make sense, it's all gonna drain towards the parking lot. You know, there's no way that it would drain towards the.
Well, except it's gonna, typically it's outside the curb lines, so the curb line's pitching away from the parking lot and on an embankment situation anyhow, so. We're adding some water faster to the stream than what it was before. And as this gentleman said earlier, there's water now being entered into the stream again from what the state had done. What's the downstream situation look like as far as restrictions go, the culverts, dams, or whatever, going out, and how are we affecting? I know we're affecting it because we're adding water, more impervious dumping in there, less infiltration, and it's happening quicker than it would if it was on a grass field.
Right.
So it has some effect.
Well, you know, our calculations show that we match the peak rates. And the way that we're doing it is we're putting a very, very large underground chamber system in here. So that, you know, before even the overflow, we're capturing a 2-year design storm, which is about a 3-inch rainstorm. You know, and then it gets metered out. You know, it gets detained and metered out after the, you know, the bulk of the flow is coming through the brook. As far as constriction go, you know, the Pleasant Valley Road culvert, I think it's a 30-inch culvert.
No, it's all downstream is where my
And
main
then
concern.
downstream, the new culvert that was put in is much, much larger.
And what's below that, Pat?
Below that is the dam structure for Gerard Pond, you know, which I think is about an 8-foot spillway. You know, so there's not really a restriction there. Downstream of that is twin 36-inch culverts for the old Hall Road, for the.
Just, I mean, it's.
So yeah, so we're not really restricted downstream. Upstream there is a restriction, and that's probably why, you know, the water, if I didn't witness it, but if water was going over Pleasant Valley Road, it's because that is the restriction, it's upstream of our site.
And the last thing I got is going back to the previous project. When you were in here one time, we were talking about that big detention pond and the fact that there's cat nine tails and everything else growing in it.
Right.
And if my recollection is correct, you had a situation where you either had to clean the pond out or provide a letter to us from somebody, qualified individual, stating that the fact that the vegetation in there was not affecting the overall capacity of the pond as designed or the function of the pond or anything else in relation to it. And I don't think we've seen that yet.
No, and you haven't, and you know, that was probably an oversight on my fault. I did the research on it, and basically, you know, I think the conclusion that everyone had come that it's more beneficial. It's beneficial to have vegetation in there that's going to soak up the nutrients coming in. So I have to prepare.
It's a deviation from the drawings and everything else, so just to complete the circle,
Yep.
if we had something in the file, just to.
Any other comments?
Request a continuation?
Thank you. 2 weeks gonna be enough?
Which means you'd have to
Yep.
get it in by next Wednesday.
Just a thought, I mean, he's waiting for planning board approval and everything else.
That's why I'm asking if they'd be ready.
So I think
Yep.
we've asked for an extension to the second meeting in January for the planning board.
Second meeting in January?
And that's the 20th,
Yep.
I think, right?
17th.
Planning's the
Oh, the planning?
Yeah, so you know, I guess the second meeting would probably be best for me to wrap everything up. Unless there's,
Well,
But our
then,
meeting's the 17th, not the 20th. That's-
Hey,
Yeah,
I
you
got
would be
something.
closing it.
Because this perennial stream issue is such an elephant in the room, why don't we come back in 2 weeks and we can talk about that, and maybe we can hash that out one way or another?
Right.
Because everything else is gonna be dependent on that determination.
That sounds like a good idea.
So what date's that?
Third.
The 3rd,
Make a motion to continue to January 3rd at
7:05.
7:05 PM.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Great talking to you again.
Thanks a lot.
You tend to break ground in spring, is that the game plan?
We, you know, with the tenant in this building, at a minimum, we would be constructing this building, we're
You good
still
for this one?
negotiating with the restaurant tenant. We're not at the term.
It's gonna flood right there.
Depends on how high they raise the grade. If they raise the grade high enough, it won't flood.
How high would you raise
Well,
the
the
grade,
water,
Bob?
the water's coming over the road now, it'll flood it.
Well, all it has to be is a foot or so above the cut of the road, right?
I remember seeing,
Wanda, you got an IDA for me?
Yeah, no, I agree. I've seen it too, particularly in the spring.
they shouldn't
Have a
put
good
the
one.
bed
Take
there.
care.
They should move
That's,
it over.
that's part of the reason I asked the question about the downstream,
Yeah,
whether or not it was affecting the added water was affecting that.
yeah, they can put a building in there.
Thanks for your patience. Sutton Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, December 20th, 2017, at 7:35 at the Sutton Town Hall, 4 Uxbridge Road, Sutton, Mass. Purpose of this hearing is to review a determination of applicability submitted to the Conservation by Donald Salerno and Marna Haas, Sutton, Mass. Project consists of removing a dead tree.
Okay, I'm keeping it simple. We have a tree on our property at 39 and a half. I'm Marna Haas, by the way. Nice to meet you. And you are?
I'm Brandon Fenough. I am the
Brandon.
consultant to the commission.
Okay, and did you get over to see
I
our
did.
tree?
In fact, I'm bringing it up. I'm gonna.
Okay, I
bring up
gotta
a
put my
picture
glasses back on.
that
And
you
I
can
also
use.
emailed Wanda some other photos that I also have on a USB stick here. So if somebody wants to look at them, or I have a laptop. That's the dead tree. Dead or dying. I was trying to get a letter from Mr. R.W. Emmett, who's an arborist in Millbury. He's looked at it. He told me it had to come down, but he seems to be a little stressed lately and hasn't gotten me the letter on the condition of the tree. But we did have a huge windstorm in November? October. And one of the branches fell on the house, and put a nice dent in the roof with a hole in it. And that's when we called in Mr. Emmett. This is our tenant, John Gill. Lives at 39 and a half West Sutton Road. So we're requesting that we be allowed to take down the tree. It's that simple. And I had left a map with one on the property, but it is approximately right here. This is the street, and it is about there.
It's in the file.
Unfortunately, it is on the, within 100 feet.
No, 200 feet for this lake.
It's 200 feet for
200 feet from
200
Great
feet.
Pond.
Okay. It doesn't matter, the whole property is in the
Yep,
middle.
there you go.
No, it is what it is. Just
Yep.
need a licensed arborist to say that it needs to come down, that it's a risk to life and
Yep.
safety of life and property. And again, the normal procedure and policy is that they do some kind of replacement. And where?
Now, it is a very small property. It's 6,750 feet. And our tenant has planted a bunch of bushes that weren't there before, as well as a magnolia tree.
Magnolia tree and a bunch of Rosa Sharons. I'm not the
You're not helping
Not
yourself
sure
right
in
now.
the crowd, no. She who must be obeyed plants things. I just put them where she tells me. But we have a substantial magnolia tree we've added recently. It was supposed to grow to 10 feet, and it's up to 25 and still going.
And that
so
is right on the lake side.
So we're kinda hoping we can get away with no more tree.
We already got those, though.
Well, here's the difficulty, because of the slope of the property coming down, there's a slope there, and every time they've tried to plant something there, it dies because of all
The road salt kills it.
road salt and everything else that comes down. And then there's a very small strip of land between where the embankment comes down, and then you start going down the embankment again, and that's where that tree is. So there isn't a whole lot of space to plant something there. And then
You could take
the
that tree down and
lakeside-
plant another one next to it where it was.
I think the town's overhanging oaks will probably shade it too much, but, you know, a small tree in that area I could live with. It's, you know, we don't,
Doesn't necessarily have to be a tree, it could be a bush.
bushes are a lot less
Or maybe, you know, several bushes instead of one tree.
invasive.
Well, no invasives allowed, obviously.
No, I mean of my space, not in the biological sense of invasive, but
How are you gonna take the tree down?
we are not.
Well, I know,
The
how are they going to,
arborist- the
do they need
arborist
a
is up-
crane or?
That's up to him. I
No.
think
He's
they will.
puzzling.
Well, he's
on
gotta
that.
get his letter in here first,
Yeah.
before
They
you
can-
can get the tree down.
Can he email that letter so they don't have to come back, right?
Well, somebody has to be here at the hearing. You can't hold a hearing without
Unless we
some
did-
kind of representation.
Did an emergency,
Well,
Well,
where a branch already fell.
Yeah.
I mean, that,
And it was a huge branch, I have pictures of it, and it's already hit the house. There's one that's overhanging the garage that you can see on his picture there. That is,
I see it every morning on my way to work.
I
know that tree.
personally,
It's the only branch on that tree that even pretends to have leaves anymore.
the commission creates its own threshold for what an emergency should be.
I mean, we wanna be responsible homeowners and take the tree down responsibly. Mr. Emmett did go look at it. He stood there puzzling, cause I was there when he did it. He stood there puzzling, and it wasn't getting the tree down that was the issue for him. It was getting the wood up and out of there. That was his question in his mind and what he was puzzling about. But, I mean, I've emailed him, I've talked to him on the phone, I've asked for the letter. We would prefer to use him, but if I have to, I'll go to some other arborist. But we wanna be responsible, but we couldn't do anything until we met here.
and we need the letter.
That the tree is dying or dead?
And the threat too.
And a threat to life and or property.
unless you're saying it's an emergency situation and
How much damage, how much did it cost to fix your roof?
It isn't fixed yet. I did some
We
patching
haven't
on
fixed it. We're not fixing anything. He
No,
patched
no
it.
fixed roof till tree gone.
We patched it, and the insurance company has already paid us $4,100.
The insurance company thinks that whole half of the roof has to be done.
Well,
Yes.
Over the years, so many smaller branches have fallen and damaged so many shingles. It's just a lot of.
I don't want it on my conscience if that tree falls on the house
Where
tonight,
did it
so
hit?
I'd like to call it an emergency personally.
Can
Me
you
too.
look
I'm
at,
with Bill.
where did it hit? Did it hit this side of the roof?
It hit right on the peak,
I can show you.
right where you see
The
the.
big branch fell right across that little area there, the entry area,
Yeah.
and it punched right there. A side branch about this big in diameter went straight through the shingles. I just stuck some pieces of aluminum
But
in
the
there for
insurance
now.
adjuster said that the hole from the peak of the house all the way down needs to get done.
We've had branches hit, up to halfway up that forward part of the roof there, approximately where the little hand symbol is there. And anywhere from there down's been hit in the past, it's just never done that much damage before. Because this was a fat one that came down.
It's the commission's prerogative if you wanna call this an emergency situation or not. If you do call it an emergency situation, I think that per what has been done before, the letters should still be required.
I would still like the letter, and I would vouch for Bill Emmett. I've used him personally. I like his work, and he's very honest. I would tell him that you need the letter personally, me speaking, you want the letter when he comes to do the job. That the letter has to be in hand before he can start. Might be a way to force
I
him.
have no problem with that.
And I'm sure he will do that,
Yeah.
and and then get the tree down before it makes any more damage, and plant whatever.
We doing it,
I don't know.
Well, somebody has to make a
I'm just-
motion. We're in that
Right.
kind of situation.
Make a motion to issue an emergency certificate to remove a tree from 39.5 West Sutton Road.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
I didn't hear Joyce.
Aye.
Okay. All right.
All right.
And
I
then
couldn't-
you'll need a copy of that letter before
Before-
he starts the work.
Before
Needs
that
to be
saw
I
here.
give it
starts.
to Wanda?
Yep.
Okay. I have no problem with
And
that.
I'm sure he will
Because
do
if he
it.
doesn't get to me, back to me, I'm gonna.
And if he
follow
doesn't get
it.
back to you, please just use someone that will provide the letter.
We will find someone that is literate.
All right, so
You still need the plot
procedurally,
plan.
Mitigation.
Yes, we
Plot
still
plan.
need the
Now-
planting plan and,
Location.
this is what's gonna happen. They're gonna issue this tonight, right
Uh-huh.
now, which means you'll be able to do this tomorrow.
If
But-
they have the letter here.
If they have the letter from the arborist, which will get sent to Wanda, once they have that, at the next regular meeting, the commission can issue the RDA that you requested, which will have the conditions that you have to plant whatever you wanna plant, but you should talk about that now on the RDA. Cause that's still open. You just issued an emergency certificate. That's something separate. This RDA hearing is still open. So what would you like to see as far as mitigation and where?
Got room for blueberry bushes? Blueberry bushes?
I would no idea if they grow there or not. I have.
It's- It doesn't get a whole lot of light there, and the rest of the property is pretty much.
It's supposed to be, at least in
on the
theory, as
edges.
close as possible to the existing tree.
Or
So-
close
or closer to the water. You could do, mountain laurel, you could,
Do you want evergreen? Do you want the leaves to fall off? Do you want berries? Do you want no berries? Do you want colorful berries? Do you
Well,
want the kind of berries you
It
can
matters
eat?
not at all what I want, it's what you want. I mean,
well, no, you gotta pick what you want.
I know nothing about shrubbery. You're asking the wrong guy.
Blueberry bushes are great.
Blueberry bushes are easy.
How about you put,
Blueberry bushes are easy. I will go with blueberry bushes.
Does there have to be a certain size?
Yes.
Okay.
And how many?
it's usually 1 gallon, I think. It was a 3 gallon.
3 gallons.
3 gallon minimum size.
That's the good sized ones.
High
Yeah.
bush.
So a 3 gallon blueberry bush,
High
Two of
bush.
them.
2 of them.
2 of them.
High bush.
High bush blueberry, where they gonna go?
I would say the only practical place to put them is on the street side, but I would have no idea where would be the best place.
Well, where the tree is or closer to the water.
Do you have a spot to put a couple bushes down by the water?
Well, the area, not really, we have, where am I?
Am I in the right spot? I think I am. Hold on,
No,
No, I don't think so.
hold on. You're right, I'm a little too far down. Sorry.
Yeah, one out. There we go.
We're right here.
Okay.
Oh, it looks like you got room in here. There's a lot of green right here.
It's lawn, and they kind of, put blueberries, can't see the lake anymore, which kind of defeats. the-
Well, no,
blueberries
no,
don't get
you can
that
see
tall.
right over them.
I personally would rather go up the side here or in the front.
Everybody always wants to go up the side because then they're not in the way, and it's not very effective. The whole idea is to try to create some kind of buffer zone next to the lake to improve water quality and provide some kind of wildlife habitat.
It's a nice theory, but, got a lawn and a stone wall. I mean,
It's all right.
it's never gonna
How
be a
about-
forest.
I have it, John,
What?
where those, tiger lily things are. Right in front of the patio.
Gotcha. We got it.
Where's
We
that?
got the spot. Let me
Yeah.
show you if you can,
Yeah.
that's all pixelated.
This is the best this is the best you were gonna get.
Anyway, this is the garage, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is the house.
Mm-hmm.
There's a patio
This is
right
a
where.
little patio right here, and we'll plant them right in here. There's
Done.
There's
How
like
about-
tiger
I'll tell
lilies
you
or wildflowers or something right there now.
Stamp it.
And 2 blueberry bushes right there will do just
We'll do
fine
that.
because
Okay, so
They'll
an
get
RDA,
light.
they'll get
contingent
some.
upon the arborist letter and the planting of 2 blueberry bushes in that corner.
Done deal.
Okay, and Wanda's not gonna be here next week, so if you get the letter between now and next week, you can call me.
okay. And you're Joyce?
I am.
Joyce, I actually live at 471 Boston Road.
Yes, I know you do.
Nice to meet you.
I remember
I know
you.
you talked to our neighbor.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Scary.
Okay,
We're done.
Thank you.
I think,
Need a
so we're
motion?
all set?
You need to take a motion and close and all that stuff.
Please make a motion to close the public hearing,
Second,
All those in favor?
Aye.
and it's make a motion to issue a
Determination of applicability.
determination of applicability for
39.
39 Sutton Road with a condition that a letter is needed to remove the tree and that 2 high bush blueberry are planted in the area you
3
pointed
gallon.
out. 3 gallon.
3 gallon.
Second.
And
All those in favor?
aye.
and does
Thank you.
anyone know how soon I have to get those planted? 'Cause
Next
obvious-
spring.
Next spring.
Next spring is fine. We can do that.
Thank you.
Have a good
All
night.
right,
Thank you.
okay, thank you.
Mm.
John, we'll just put this away.
Just looking at Andy.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I'll get something to show to the arborist that we're all set. He's gonna have to set up a police detail and everything, he already said.
Wanda is doing that now, I believe.
Okay.
The emergency certificate.
Okay, yeah, well,
Yeah,
make a
but I
you
can't
gotta,
process it till tomorrow.
That's fine.
yeah, no rush.
Wanda, do you want me to stop by and pick it up, or?
Yeah, you could. I will only be here till 3 tomorrow.
Okay,
So,
I'll come later
just in
in
the
the
morning.
day to give you a chance. Thank you.
Have a good night.
Good night, Merry Christmas.
80 Worcester Providence Turnpike.
Postponed, I believe.
Postponed? All right.
We need to continue that.
It was just a project update, so. 8:05. Here we go. Sutton Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, December 20th, 2017, at 8:05 at Sutton Town Hall, 4 Uxbridge Road, Sutton, Mass. The purpose of this hearing is to review a request for determination submitted to the Conservation Commission by David Marois, Sutton, Mass. Project consists of replacing the existing stone wall with a ready rock wall system and remove dead trees on map 8, parcels 18, 43 West Sutton Road, Sutton, Mass. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. So the condition of the existing wall that I have is in need of repair. In lieu of just repairing it in kind, I wanted to replace it with more of a permanent modular system that's tighter, that won't shift over the winter, won't have voids created, potential tripping hazards and whatnot. And then there's a couple of dead trees down on the property that I want to take down.
Do you have the dock on any sort of a permit, I mean, on any sort of a plan? Should that go on at the same time?
Mr. Marois handed me a plan that, Bob Murphy did years ago when we were on site today. It's an as-built, and, so it is shown. Is that part of an order of conditions? Alright, so it's already on there. Okay, so I wouldn't worry about that. So what he wants to do is repair this section. It's a 30-foot long section. It goes from about this tree right here and to about to this rock right here, this stump. Okay. So questions that I had, and this is looking the other direction, so to this tree right here on the other side. I personally think it's not in the greatest shape, but I think it still functions as a kind of retainer. It could be repaired a little better, My biggest concern is that two concerns, that he doesn't go any further out into the lake than already is, and my question is about how much higher will this wall be compared to what it is now, because we got the flood zone to think about as well. And if he's going up 6 inches, that's one thing, but if he wants to significantly raise it, that's another thing, so that's a question I have. What's the answer?
Yeah, it's not my intent to go any more than 6 inches higher than what's there. It's really just to even out, make it a level wall across, but not to change the grade behind it.
So you're not going up several feet to, okay.
How are you gonna do the work?
How am I gonna do the work?
Right, well, to go along with that, there was no diagram, no sketch or anything that like shows, I mean, you handed this to me today, this afternoon, but there was not even a handwritten diagram showing, what the basic outline of the wall would be, how high it would be, what kind of, what's the limit of work for it. You have a cross-sectional detail showing how high it's gonna be.
Yeah, I brought a cross-section detail. It's a typical detail off the Ready Rock website. It's much more significant. This detail pertains to a seawall versus just something on a lake where there's no appreciable change in water elevation. But it gives a basic constructability of the system. Let you look at it.
Need erosion controls?
It's really gonna be the same footprint. It's gonna, a small excavator, a mini excavator down there, just removing the rock that's there and replacing with the Ready Rock. It's
True,
not,
we still always need some form of erosion control, even if it's just a straw wattle, like 7 feet out, that's out into the lake. Some kind of semicircle.
You would need like a mini excavator though, right?
oh yeah.
Just to put, yeah.
Yeah,
just
because
so
the weight of
Right,
the blocks.
right,
Right.
that makes sense to me, right.
This is something that's fairly common that we see, and in fact, we got one coming up.
Yes.
Mr. Lamoureux. Mr. Lamoureux provided a diagram that was pretty good. And right next to him was, I forget his name, came in earlier this year, and he's redoing his right now. But provide some kind of diagram so that we know, what the limits of work are gonna be and how it's gonna get done.
And the erosion controls have to be 100% biodegradable, no plastic mesh, 12 inches. We need that on the plan.
12-inch what?
Straw wattle or
Diameter.
mulch.
12-inch diameter straw wall.
Yeah.
You're gonna grade and grass behind it, I
No,
imagine.
it's just
don't
left
leave it
natural.
alone.
Yeah, there's no lawn, there's no intention to have a lawn down.
So we need all that.
And a letter for the tree.
Letters for the
But-
trees,
I'm
how you
chasing
gonna,
Bill Emmett around
how
too,
you
so-
gonna, how you gonna
Maybe
place
it's
them?
Catch him when he's doing that job.
Yeah, I'll see if we can just put two addresses on the
right.
same letter.
Right.
Here's a question I have. Here's one of the trees you're talking about. It's leaning out over the lake. So if it falls, is it more likely to fall into the lake or onto the shed? There's two parts of it. Is the tree dead or dying? And secondly, is it a risk to life or property? Because dead trees on the bank of water are actually high value wildlife trees. I was at 20 Marsh Road, your parents' place, and today doing an inspection for a certificate of compliance, and there was a bald eagle perched out on a branch of a big tree over the lake. So that was
Impressive.
very impressive. So they use these, and the dead trees actually, they like them better because there aren't any small limbs in the way.
Well, my concern with that one, and I agree that it is leaning towards the water, but on a windy day, and if the tree's rotten, it could potentially land on the shed. So, that's the rationale there.
What would you
Talk
want to
to
replace
Emmett.
that with?
Yeah.
I could put blueberry bushes right in the same spot, right when I'm standing there, I could put blueberry bushes.
An eagle and a blueberry bush,
Well, that's your call.
Is it just one tree or two trees?
There's actually there's a tree in the picture here, and it's a split tree. There's a single trunk, goes up,
Yeah.
and the top half of one blew down and it's laying in the water. I just wanted to take the rest of it down. Because that one does lean right over towards where the dock is.
Yeah, I think some kind of handwritten diagram of
Yep.
the basics of how the wall's gonna get built, where it's gonna get built, how high, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I could add more to that drawing.
Some kind of detail, cross-sectional detail would be nice. Hold on a second here.
Put that.
I got something.
Give it back to him.
Great.
Want me to give it to him?
I'd put it in the file, right? Is that it?
Yeah, for example,
But you're not gonna use that
this is what they
detail.
did for,
What's that?
That detail shows a cast-in-place foundation.
No, I'm not looking to go that.
That's what I'm saying, you're not gonna use that
No,
detail.
that's
No, no,
what's
no,
gonna be
he's not
for-
gonna do that.
for a
Oh,
tall
okay,
wall.
he's not gonna do that.
I'm just looking for gravity.
That's it.
I know, come up with a detail,
Yeah,
gravity
I'll-
well,
I'll
right,
do
not,
that.
and don't put that in the record, because that shows a concrete foundation,
Yeah,
which you're not gonna do.
So that's,
All right, I'll take that.
this is
You know what I'm
nothing.
saying?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Where are the evidence?
I'll modify that to what's applicable.
Yeah, exactly.
see, that's an example of what somebody's doing for their,
Okay.
I need that back, but, that's the idea.
Mind if I take a picture?
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
All right, so I'll get the letter and I'll clean up the drawing, add some more detail.
planting plan, what you gonna plant? Where?
Okay.
Coming back to the next meeting?
Yeah, it should be able to, if I can get a hold of Bill. Would be the only hiccup. But
January 3rd.
2 plants, we're gonna consider that 1 tree or 2 trees?
That's up to them.
Two
Usually it's at least 2.
two
Two
trees for 4 shrubs.
Well, is it a tree that's 1 trunk?
If it's, the rule is,
Chest height, right?
it's at chest height, and it's split at that point, then
Yeah.
it's 2.
What if it's below chest?
Then it's 1.
1 tree? I'm taking half of 1 tree.
No, if it,
I like
you
that.
have 2 trunks,
Oh, we just call it 3 bushes.
if you have 2 trunks at breast height, it's 2 trees.
So if the V is below your chest.
You still have 2 trees, yeah.
If the V is above your chest, it's 1 tree.
Okay.
Do you have any really tall friends?
No, but I have a short friend, I'm gonna weigh it.
What time,
So
Wanda?
4, we're gonna go 4 then, on the bushes?
No, if it's just taking down a total of 3 trees, then
No,
it's
it's
6.
taking down
Just
2
do- just
trees.
1/2 of
Two
the
trees.
split.
Oh, okay, just 1/2.
2
Right.
blueberry bushes.
One half is already in the water, right, so
One
you're
half,
not,
right,
you're
right.
not taking credit for that one, you're just taking the other half.
What time, Wanda?
January 3rd, 7:40 PM.
Make a motion to continue to January 3rd at 7:40 PM.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right,
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Merry Christmas.
Thanks. It's the busiest we've been in a long time.
Late.
I have all the meetings too.
Way past my bedtime. Sutton Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, December 20th, 2017 at 8:15 PM. The Sutton Town Hall, 4 Oxbridge Road, Sutton, Mass. Purpose of this hearing is to review a determination of applicability submitted to the Conservation Commission by Daniel Lamoureux, Sutton, Mass. Project consists of repairing sections of an existing wall on existing concrete footprint on map 14, parcels 23 on 54.5 Griggs Road, Sutton, Mass. Welcome.
Welcome. I'm Dan Lamoureux. I own a house at 54.5 Griggs Road. I've submitted an application to rebuild and repair in kind a retaining wall on the north side of my property that faces Ramshorn Pond. The current wall is it's approximately 60.5 feet long, about 4 feet tall. You can see from the photos that Mr. Fanoff took today that the wall, particularly this left side, is falling into the water, and it's crumbled and broken on both sides and the stairs as well. So I've spoken with Mr. Jim Benson from Millbury, who's done work for me previously. He submitted from, that I got from speaking with Mr. Bankston shows that he would be using the required 12-inch wattle 5 to 7 feet from
Face of the
the
wall.
project area.
And he now knows it's the right one, cause I was out there last week, and he had the wrong ones at the neighbors, and
Yes,
so now he knows.
yes.
My only comment, and I mentioned this to Mr. Lamro today, in his letter, he recommended, installing the wattle 15 feet from the wall. 5 to 7 feet is plenty, I think. And it's gonna be an in-kind replace repair job, so I think this is pretty straightforward.
Yep.
Right next door, what's your address of your neighbors again?
56.
56 was approved earlier this year, same kind of situation.
Anyone here to speak on this? Andy, any?
Looks good to me.
Mr. T?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing, and it's just a comment, it's not necessarily fair, but, you know, we really should be looking at in addition to the wattle, some form of oil absorbent next to it because of the close proximity to the lake in the event of a hydraulic hose break on a backhoe or something like that, but again, it's just a.
Well, wouldn't they be carrying theoretically carrying an oil spill kit?
Nope.
So you want to make...
Practice or theory, it doesn't happen, so.
I would say that it would be unlikely.
That's up to you.
Yep.
Well, they should have extra stuff there anyway in case there's a problem, so I don't,
Well, this is an
What-
RDA, so it doesn't require
Yeah.
a pre-construction meeting, so I'm not exactly gonna be
No,
meeting with the
it
contractor.
was more a comment for the board for consideration. I mean, it is a consideration because, and even for the property owner, in the event there is an oil leak, you're responsible for cleaning the lake up, the entire lake. So if you think it's worthwhile to put an absorbent pad down,
Okay.
that just protects you. That's, this ultimately, you're responsible for cleaning the lake up if there's a spill.
All right.
Or you can
So
tell
you're
Baxter to make sure he does it, one way, it's his responsibility, but I mean, it's
I'll
just,
speak to him about that.
all right. I guess the only other question I got is on the lawn side of the wall, the disturbance area is only gonna be 10 feet or something, or is that noted in the drawing, or?
I doubt that it would be even as much as 10 feet, and the drawing includes that it.
Well, the
any
reason I say
disturbance would be re-loomed and seeded on
You gotta
top.
cast the dirt someplace, so even if you're excavating behind a wall for 2 feet, you gotta put the dirt someplace, so that's part of the disturbance, that's all.
Yes, that'll be immediately re-loomed and reseeded to the current grade.
And he makes a statement in his report that the elevation of the lawn will not be increased. And that can be put down as a condition of the determination anyway, which I plan to use this as a guide. So if you want to, you could say negative determination with conditions as outlined in Mr. Lamoureux's letter.
Make a
Use
motion.
that as our reference.
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
second,
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Make a motion to issue a negative determination for 54.5 Briggs Road with
conditions as outlined.
the conditions that are outlined, thank you.
And with a change to, instead of the wattles being 15 feet, put them more 5 to 7.
From 15 to 5 to 7 feet.
Second.
The 12-inch biodegradable wattles.
It doesn't give him a lot of room to work. 10 feet would be reasonable. Because he has to take the wall apart and put the rocks someplace and then sort through the rocks to build it back up and,
Is the excavator gonna be down below in the dry lake bed?
Up on top.
I'm not entirely sure.
In the water. Well, you can't put it in the water, but, kidding. Oh, all right.
Well, the lake is actually 50 feet minimum
Right.
Right now. You wanna
this
change
right
that
here?
to 10 feet.
I took this picture
We're gonna
today.
change that to 10 feet.
This is Mr. Lamoureux's wall right here, okay?
Is it
I measured 7 feet from the base of this wall to this line right here.
No, Bob's 100% right on that.
See,
Well,
Three months.
he's showing me proof that it doesn't happen, so what can I say?
It's a nice looking wall.
So let's change, you can amend it to 10 feet.
Adjusted to the wattles at 10 feet.
There you go.
Second, are we ready?
You just created
Yep.
a precedent.
All those in
to move
favor?
forward On all projects.
Aye.
Good job.
Aye.
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 No, on this job.
On this job.
That's a tall wall. If it was to
It's-
put a 2-foot tall,
You notice that it juts out a little bit from here? Was that where it was before? Or was it more or less even with the,
I'm sure it's gonna be even when it gets done.
You're gonna have to speak with that property.
Love thy neighbor.
Okay,
alright.
all right.
Have a good Christmas.
All set.
Go in
Thank you.
peace.
Thank you.
Sir,
Okay, you wanna sign that?
you're here for something, I bet.
Yeah.
We could do you next.
This needs to be signed also.
Get crazy here after 9 o'clock.
Should've tried after 11:30.
Oh,
I wouldn't have
Latest
been here.
I ever spoke in front of a conservation commission was 11:10, and I
Oh.
wasn't even the last person.
That was here.
No, it was Westport.
And you would be.
I'm Ralph Marois,
Okay,
brother.
let's-
There you go.
I'm the trustee of the 20 Marsh Road Realty
Yep.
Trust, and we did an application for a certificate of compliance.
All right. And Brandon was out there today.
Yes.
You're right, let me bring it up on the map, and then I get a bunch of pictures, just give me a second. Yeah, man.
Dave didn't want to stay with you?
Someone just
I
did.
don't think we've done it.
Oh.
What'd you say?
Someone just did.
I can do that one? I'm all right, I can sign this one, or
Yeah.
just check?
Why did that yellow stuff come off?
I think you look a little Tom Selleck-ish.
Alright, there's the property,
I'd have to have
Yeah.
dimples, wouldn't I?
Well,
pictures.
it might be under there.
There's the house from the parking lot side. Garage there, left side, north side of the house looking towards the lake. This is the little backyard, they got the flat part, the septic system according to the original plans is supposed to be in this area. Alright, do you have, Wanda, do they have the original plan?
Yeah.
Because I
it's
wanna
in the
go
file.
through some things, I wanted them to look at the original plan and then they can
It should be
decide.
sticking out to the left.
They can decide whether they think it was built in substantial compliance.
Is there a letter?
There's a letter that says it is. When I went down there, it looks like there's a different than what's shown on the plan. So
This is for the septic system we're talking about?
well, this is proposed house, so I presume it was for the whole deal.
Okay, yeah.
All right.
How old's that?
There's a
Like
little,
that?
what?
I doubt that. It can't be for the whole house.
How old is the plan?
That plan?
Yeah.
96, I think.
Shows the-
94,
Shows the driveway and all the sidewalks, and
8194.
So this has been open since 94, is that what
I
the?
think it's a septic drawing.
That just closed one that was open for maybe.
It's a septic drawing.
Actually, the perk test was 92.
No, what's the revision date on, the final date?
94.
94, okay, so this goes back to 94.
August of 94.
Probably built in the mid-90s, right?
Yeah, 96, I think the house was.
Right, that makes sense.
Was there any substantial things that you noticed?
So 23 years difference? Yeah.
There, all right, so you got, the septic system, where you have, what, 2 or 3 retaining walls going down the hill?
There's one, yeah, right at the top.
Yeah,
And
this is
the
the top.
wall, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll get to the other side, there's a
Wall
wall.
here, and there's at least one more going down.
There's a patio here with a wall around it, and then there's a walkway that goes down with another area
Right.
down by the wall.
The walkway go down. So if you look at those plans, there's no walkway shown going down to the water.
There's a patio area, right?
There's a patio area which is down in this area. I have more pictures. So this is the bank of the lake right here. There is an actual stone patio over here, then there's a grassed area. And there's also this little canoe shed, which isn't on the plan. There's also this semicircular retaining wall, looks like a little swimming area, that's not on the plan. That would be in the southeast corner.
Is that a dock, or what is that?
There's a dock and there's a float,
Okay, it's a float, okay.
and I don't believe that, is that shown on the plan?
No,
Okay. And here's a grassed area. And this area over here is an actual stone patio. There we go, submit that. And we have this thing here. And then there's a little carpetway path that winds up and around the house on the north side. And I don't see
any of it.
anything for, besides the dimensions for the patio area. So nothing mentioned for the stone walkway going down, nothing mentioned for the retaining wall, the semicircular retaining wall beach area. I don't see anything for docks or a float. So it's more than that's on the plan. And I will point out the facts and then let you decide whether you think it's substantial enough to issue a certificate of compliance.
So none of the other stuff was permitted?
Let's
Mr.
give this
Royce?
question to you.
I didn't construct the property.
The short answer would be yes.
Yes,
I mean,
yes.
no.
To my understanding, it was.
It
It was
wasn't?
permitted?
Well, I know that there was a lot of, I mean, this is all hearsay, so
Yeah.
I wasn't there, but, that the Conservation Commission at the time spent a lot of time here looking at this property, while it was being constructed and during this process.
None of that was on the plans, these plans, so
Right, yeah.
evidently it wasn't permitted.
Was there a separate something?
Yeah, is there another filing?
Not that Wanda, do you know of anything else?
Well, it would have been recorded on the deed. He's here to get it off, the one that's there on the deed.
That's the only one.
Well, unless there was another file open and closed, and this one wasn't, I don't know that.
Why would,
It would have been-
stranger things have happened,
Sure.
but why would that? Okay.
I'm not comfortable giving you a certificate of compliance and with all this other stuff there that was not permitted. You'd have to somehow get it permitted.
What do you do in that case? Do you do an as-built with all the modifications on it?
That's your prerogative. What the commission has been doing is in an effort to get people to come in with COC requests is to waive the requirement for an as-built unless you feel that it's so different than originally, approved that you think it's necessary. And then from there, you can deny it. You can make them file a new notice of intent or RDA to permit the additional stuff that you think is
On the folder.
in compliance, or you can issue an enforcement
Sort
order.
of the engineer's letter, so.
Is the engineer's letter in here, Wanda?
Not a lot to be gained by
I'm not
going through all
sure.
the permitting
If it's
process
No.
with something that's already done.
And I think it'd be more damage if we had them change anything.
Oh,
Well, we could have them let that roadway grow up natural, which is,
it's gonna be sold in a heartbeat once this thing's processed, then, I would guess.
I don't think it's fair to everybody else that has to come in after the fact,
I,
to tell you the
I
truth.
don't disagree with you. But what's the fix?
What's the fix? Have them file
How
any,
about doing an as-built
That's what
for
I,
what it is now?
but there has to be some sort of a,
I think what Dan's saying is that we're creating a new baseline that will be on record for anybody else in the future who decides to modify it, and you'll have it on record that that wasn't permitted.
we can't sign off on that because it looks nothing like that, but if we had an as-built,
And
we would know in the future after you sold it or whatever. Do you have somebody that could do an as-built quicker for you? I think that would be the easiest thing to do.
it's not, as Joyce is pointing out, it's not right.
It's not right,
But what's to be gained?
I think that
Some mitigation.
that's up to you. Either way, there's a kind of penalty being inflicted here. Either submit a new application for it or create an as-built. Either way, the applicant has to do something to satisfy the commission.
No, you're selling it shortly, right?
Yeah.
So you couldn't mitigate the groundswell. I mean, you can't have the new owners planting bushes and, you know. Could you? Can you do that?
You could do that.
I wouldn't.
Well, I think there needs to be an as-built with what's there and, you know, then look at it to see how it substantially disagrees with the original plan, cause it isn't fair that people file and all this was done, nobody filed.
Nobody's gonna argue that.
Right, I agree, but.
It's also not fair that this was open and no one followed up on it for
Right.
20-something years, so that's.
No,
That's
don't
not our
go there.
fault.
Well,
It's not our fault. It was their responsibility to follow up on it. It's not our responsibility.
That's the way it was, and the commission's gotten much better.
yeah, can't turn back time.
And it's a good thing that there's more people coming forward now.
Well, anytime somebody wants to sell something is when they say, uh-oh.
Well, it's the only time you do a title search.
Sure.
Right.
Pops up, so,
I can tell you, I just had to do it.
yeah.
Then I think that if you're gonna go the as-built only route, should really be anything within 200 feet, which would go about up to the house. And that's
Anything
really all that was
jurisdiction.
covered
Yeah.
in that anyway.
And there's no dock on this plan.
That would be on the
Is there?
as-built.
Put it all in there.
There's no dock either, yeah, that's another issue.
And I'm not
That's
sure.
just when we tell people to put it on the plan and
Yep.
it makes, it gets there and it's on record, so
And
that's not
that
a big
swim
deal.
thing, I'm not sure.
Right, on old stuff, that's what you've been doing. It created a
Unfortunately, this is
baseline,
old now.
Yeah,
isn't that pathetic?
23 years old.
I don't know how nobody called. I can't believe it.
Not only that, but you know,
Wish I had
Sheriff
neighbors
Briggs
like
used to perimeter the lake every
Yeah.
week.
It wouldn't surprise me if there is another one and there's a missing file or something.
I know the commission was heavily involved in it.
That's,
I know they were.
and that doesn't,
23 years ago.
but it wouldn't surprise me if we find another file that something was done
Right.
12 years ago.
In 2002 or something.
Check, but,
Yeah, go check.
well, I can't, the vault's locked.
Well, not right now.
Anyway,
I know,
I'll
I
see
mean,
what I
that,
can find.
that was
If
done
you get
back,
an
yeah,
as-built,
Yeah,
the 200
Yeah.
feet back,
yeah.
I think you've got a good chance of getting that closed.
The docks are not in the water right now, but.
Just
just
place it
locate
on
where
there
they
somewhere.
were.
Where they-
Rough
where
sketch
they
where
go
they're
back
supposed
in,
to go.
yeah.
Okay, sure.
And what,
By
if they are,
civil
and-
engineer, registered land surveyor, somebody has to.
and they have to have they have to
Reflectors on-
follow the dock policy with the reflectors on them, the size, so you need to put all that on the plan too.
And that's also on the website.
And a topographical survey is gonna be required as well. You're gonna know what the slopes are, what the elevations are, so. It's features in topography.
Good with that, Andy?
Yeah.
Bill? Bob? Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Is there another hearing involved? I submit and you review and
Yeah, it's a continuation, if you might, of the same request for.
if I can get it done in a couple of weeks.
I'm getting the hairy eyeball over here, so he's gonna speak now.
Yeah, you're gonna continue it, do you wanna, you think you can find a surveyor that get this done in 2 weeks? I don't think you will, because every surveyor I know is out straight.
Probably not.
Well, if you come
I
in,
got a letter, but that's about the
come
best I
in
could do.
with it after the holiday, and I'll put you on the.
Yeah, when you get it, we can get it
January.
scheduled.
Okay.
Is this holding up the closing?
Probably.
No, that stinks.
Well, sometimes what they do is they hold back money.
We're being as Christian as we can.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I'm sure they will. I'm sure.
You know, and then-
We'll get it done.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
CFC for 6 Tunnel Road.
Okay, here, okay, so this is part of a double file that was done before, single Curry Ave and 6 Tuttle. I think all the paperwork is here that is needed. Got Elton brought in some stuff, there's pictures here, it didn't come out too good.
You seen it, Brandon?
6 Tuttle Road
And there's the
is
request.
either the very first or second project I was involved with in the town of Sutton back in 2006, when I was Steve Zisk's lackey.
Good, it's 20 past 9. It's all set?
Alton Stone and I stood out there and argued like, Alton likes to do. And I went there today and everything looks great, so sign off.
Sign away.
We need some talk now.
Make a motion to issue a certificate of compliance for 6 Tuttle Road.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
I was the only one here for that.
Probably.
That one,
23, Gulf Ridge
okay,
Drive.
Explain this one now. Armsby Road, right now John Burns is still doing phase 3. In the meantime, because you can't close the hearing, you can't close that filing on that particular subdivision.
Give them a
what you
partial.
wanna call it, you have to issue partials. There are 3 involved because of what they are. One's Pleasant Valley, one's from development, art lot development, and the other one, wait a minute now, Pleasant Valley Country Club. The other one is, I've got them all here, art lot development, and the other one is, there's off Armsby Road, there's 3 of them here.
We all set, Brandon, on these?
So,
No,
all
No.
3 of them,
I'll tell you why in a second.
we've always done partials. It's been way back, I've been here 16 years, we've always done partials for anybody who
we got
sells the
that.
properties. So you need to decide what you wanna do with this. These people are selling,
Yep.
this is what we've been doing.
Go, Brandon.
This is before my time, I don't even know what's going on,
Yep.
what went on, so I gotta do that research. I haven't seen a site plan of even the approved plan to know
Yep.
what I'm doing. I don't know if we even have an engineer's letter associated with these yet, do we?
No, you probably won't.
We
Because
have to
these
have
are-
some kind of letter from an engineer, even if it's for a partial.
Probably have to get in touch with John Burns.
And then I can do that. John's pretty easily available.
Well,
is
the owner could do that and
I
Yeah,
suppose
submit
he
the
could.
thing correctly.
Right, so, this is a situation where this goes back prior to this. Were you around for these?
No,
The prior ones that we have,
No
we've
one
had
is
4.
familiar with this project.
This is the original, probably started the condos
Original
15 years ago.
Armsby Road started with,
Yeah,
John
really is.
McClure.
John McClure, yeah.
the original.
Where is this
First.
Gulf Ridge Drive?
It's off Armsby
As you go
Road.
down- As you go down Boston Road, when you go past,
Oh, it's these things right
cemetery.
here.
Yeah.
It's this subdivision right
Yeah.
here. All right,
It's
yeah,
that one right there.
I think I've driven down this once.
He's on phase 3 right now, which comes out of Armsby Road.
Oh,
That's what he's working on
it kinda
right now.
comes down, I know this goes into cart paths on the,
Phase 1 goes off Boston
This-
Road, I think.
Right, phase 1
phase,
Boston Road.
phase 3 is up above, the,
Connell Lodge.
Connell Lodge, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's up behind the pond lodge, yeah.
right, that's these property, this
Yeah.
property right here.
Yeah, they're all building them there now,
But that's not Gulf Ridge Drive.
no.
No, Golf Ridge is down further.
We
It's
need the,
very
we need the
beginning.
letter from the engineer, and
Right.
we need the documentation.
I need some kind of a old plan.
Yep.
To look at to begin with, before I can even start thinking about this.
Thank you. 39, Putnam Hill Road.
36?
36.
Yes, I went there, they moved the wood pile, they cleaned out the stuff in the wetlands, but there is a platform the wood was on that needs to come out, but it's frozen to the ground. So, if we can condition it that they remove that in the spring when the ground is thawed, they have done the other stuff.
Was that a motion?
I was just telling you about it, but
I know.
if you want it to be a motion, it can be a motion
Second
to issue a certificate of compliance providing they remove the platform in the spring.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Why spring?
It's frozen to the ground.
So it's gonna be 50 degrees tomorrow and raining, so.
Oh, cool. Who did the second, I'm sorry?
I did, Bill.
Well, maybe they could get it out, I don't know.
Remove the platform ASAP?
Yep.
Get it out, I'm sure.
Yes.
And they get the certificate after they bring the picture of the platform gone.
Well, they need this to close on the house too, so.
Motivation is a
Yes.
wonderful thing.
They've moved pretty quick on what they did
Yep.
already, so I say they're motivated sellers.
Yep.
Okay, I, no.
297 Manchog
Wait,
Road.
before you go further, I need to tell this lawyer something on
Yep.
the other one you just did.
That there's a platform that they had the wood stacked on that's
The
gotta go.
golf ridge, no, golf ridge.
All right, number
You're
one,
going too fast for me, I can't write all this.
number one. Need engineer's letter.
Okay, I heard that part.
Plans.
Number two, need plans.
Okay. Go for a middle.
I'm sure this one's old enough that they required an as-built,
Probably.
but at least a copy of the original plan that I can use to compare things. That's really all I need.
Okay, so you wanna move this to the January 3rd or the other, or?
Not until we get the letter and the plans, and Brandon has an opportunity to go.
Thank you.
Make a motion to table the minutes from December 6th.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
297 Manchog Road.
I thought we,
I
Wanda,
tried, but I didn't get there.
Wanda, you finally received the engineer's letter on that,
Get the,
so
these files.
you will be able to sign tonight.
297. Okay, here's 297, the letter's sticking out of the side. I'm gonna sign that.
Make a motion, do we need a motion on that?
Yes, we do.
Sign a certificate of compliance for 297 Manchog Road.
Second.
All
Oh, I
those
can't
in
second
favor?
that.
Yes, you can.
Okay.
Aye.
All right.
Things get sloppy
Aye,
around
I
here
guess.
after night.
Bob?
Aye.
let's just go look at the letter. Another person who can't read their writing.
Is it distinctive though?
Okay,
Yeah,
now on
it's distinctive,
the-
I guess. I don't know, I haven't seen more than one copy.
Just tell them that.
Okay.
He does start it with a W and a D though.
Okay, where did 6 Tuttle Road end up?
I don't see 6 Tuttle Road.
It's here.
Up top.
Was it this one?
It's a fat
10
file.
Partridge Hill Road, no answer yet.
What's this go to?
Yeah, Joyce and Bob need to
Okay.
sign. She has till March.
Yep.
Yeah. Is it over there?
Is that Toll Road?
It's all right, they have until March 1.
Yep.
Oh, here are the files on the Armsby Road one I was looking for. Like I said, I have 4 others, 3 others that were done, just partial certificates. And that's what Mark was doing. That's
Yep.
what he was having us do.
It's that time of the evening?
Okay, now, I tried to write it in on a couple of them, cause I printed this before I got this information. Planning board is looking for a review for Pleasant Valley Drive and 30 and 32 Central Turnpike, which belongs to Marty Linda, I'm sorry. So, there's 2 reviews here. Pleasant Valley review, you've already pretty much seen.
What would we be reviewing?
Well, for
Hopefully a
planning
routing
board, they
slip.
wanna, yeah, to slip,
That they need to
that
file?
they, no, that they, what you wanna tell them at their meeting. Cause you know how they said they're going to planning board
Well,
meeting?
they're filing with us, so.
So whatever you wanna write on there.
What's,
What's the address?
11
that's
Pleasant
what we just
Valley.
talked about tonight.
Oh,
Pat Doherty.
Yeah.
okay.
I think all you have to do is they're in
Yeah.
process, in progress, in
Yeah.
conservation.
Now
It's
this
kinda like a
next
routing
one,
slip, right?
Yeah.
this next one, what Marty Linda's doing is he's giving a strip of land, or
Selling.
selling a strip of land to the neighbor, because he doesn't need access to his piece of property in the back. And that is also going, this is a strip, this is the property, he can access it from elsewhere, so he's, selling this piece to this gentleman here who lives there. I don't know why, but they're doing it, so they're just looking for a review on that, if you have any comments.
What's the address again?
530 and 532 Central Turnpike.
It says rescind retreat lot and common driveway.
Yeah, they,
Oh, this is the nightmare of a driveway.
Yep.
We have to deal with. So what,
Marty bought it at the auction,
okay,
and he's selling off a piece to the neighbor who's got the driveway issue.
That bought the,
Murphy's.
that bought
Because
the new home.
Yeah, they sold the house, and someone new bought it, and they bought a piece from Marty. There's an order of conditions on what he bought. No work's been done on it,
that's right,
Right.
that
and
is
he
true.
wants it off there, because
Yeah.
he's in that mode.
Right,
So-
cause the, it's a shared driveway, the driveway that's
Yep.
been a nightmare is technically on 530. So here's,
Right.
the driveway is technically
So
in
that's
this
Murphy.
long strip that goes to 530, but nobody lives there.
Right.
So this guy originally came in and says, I'll do the fixing. Did a plan, I went out there many times, cause there's problems with drainage and erosion, but then still nothing's been done.
And weren't they supposed to do a replication area down below
They were
that they
supposed to
didn't
do
do?
That's correct, they're supposed to do a replication area right down in this area, because they needed to widen it, if I
Yeah.
remember right,
Yeah,
to get whatever stormwater mitigation they needed.
so that one in the back, Marty's gonna access from the other direction, is that it?
Yeah,
So
he abuts it.
Yeah.
That's his homestead.
Yeah, he doesn't need it, so that's why he's.
But he's not selling it as a buildable lot, he's
No.
just
No.
incorporating
He
it
bought
into
it
his.
as more,
Selling that
Yeah.
more
strip
buffer for him.
to the-
So he's buying this lot right here. Right here,
a part of it.
part of it, and then
Yeah.
we're gonna cut this off and make this part of 532.
Correct.
So that entire driveway
Right.
will
He
now be
bought-
part of 532.
Yeah, he bought it at auction.
He bought that as well.
530.
So
I believe.
he has both these pieces now.
No,
No,
He only has one piece.
530's in the front.
He has a
They're
retreat
buying
lot.
that little piece.
he owns a retreat
The
lot.
other one in the back is being changed to a regular lot that is attached to his property.
Non-buildable lot.
A non-buildable.
This thing right here,
Right.
it's gonna get attached to his property
Right.
here.
Yep.
And he bought
He's-
this thing right here.
No.
No,
No.
he sold that
He-
piece, the strip.
He sold the strip
He sold
to
that
who?
530.
to that guy, so he's not gonna have a retreat lot, he's just gonna have a regular lot with no common driveway.
No access to Central
No
Park.
access.
I got it now.
Or Century Farm Road.
Landlocked. It's his land.
Okay, well, this guy still has the issues with the driveway, but it's been so quiet for so long, I
but he
presume
bought
it's
it with
not a
that.
problem.
There was still an.
He
open
bought it with
lot
that.
on the top.
The new guy.
The new guy did?
Yep.
All right, well,
The town was supposed to have said that Marty had to do the driveway, but they didn't bother doing it. Oh, well,
what do you wanna do about it, anything?
nothing.
Okay,
Well, there's an open order on 530. What do you wanna do with that?
There's
How-
an open, there's,
How did it get sold without them fixing that?
says the
Nobody,
town didn't do anything.
well, isn't it, there's something on the
The
deed?
driveway had been, or has been improved prior to it being sold. But it was never used as a retreat lot driveway, so that it was just the current driveway as it stood was, the gravel portion was improved prior to being sold.
But there was an order of conditions on it where they were supposed to
There
do
is
a
an open
replica.
order of
There's an
conditions.
open order of conditions on
On
it.
the retreat lot,
No,
no work on the retreat lot, there's an open order of conditions, no work was ever done. He's gonna get a letter from whomever was the engineer saying that no work was done on the lot.
But there was work done on the driveway, cause then there was supposed to be a replication area and everything.
That was
Mr.
the
Haney.
going up to the first house.
Right,
No work was done on the
so,
second one.
so that house has been sold without any
I don't-
closing
I
off
don't
of
know
that
about that.
order of condition.
I don't
I
know
thought
about
that's
that.
what you just said.
No. There's one on the retreat lot that he bought. No work was done on it.
Right.
He wants to close that
check
out.
on it,
Yeah, there's
see,
a-
see.
So this is
I
a
know
file
there
that
was
goes
one.
back to,
Yeah. And he owned it.
2009. They wanted to improve the driveway because of all of the drainage issues
Yep.
they were having. And there was
That was the first house that was built.
The only house that's been built.
there was a notice of intent filed, there was a replication area, it was part of it, and I presume, and nothing, they never did anything.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I think that's for the house that was built. That was on that lot.
But that was a common driveway into the back part. So,
Right, it was a common driveway, but no house got built in the
So-
back.
I know it, so it's not a common driveway anymore,
No,
but
it's
the
not.
guy that has the house there has the open order from,
I
Well-
think he closed it because it recently sold.
Yeah, I'm
Or
gonna
it's
have
about to
I'll
sell.
look
No,
into
it's
it
about to
because
sell.
I'm gonna have to
Yeah,
look into it
look into it
I
because
think there's still an open.
the open order
Yeah,
is still
on
there.
that house.
Yeah,
There is, yeah.
so they'll be
532.
running into the
Yeah.
same
So it's-
problems.
Yeah, so it's a double order of conditions with the retreat lot and
Mhm.
the standard lot.
And he's looking to close the retreat lot one.
I don't have paperwork on it.
He's going to apply. That's what
Oh,
this is
alright.
all about.
Okay.
Not to stretch the conversation anymore, but do we send letters once the stuff that stays open, so we don't end up like the 1992?
Well, there's
No.
300 files in the other room, so.
Okay, question answered.
When they get their order conditions, they get the paperwork
I
right
give
in
them
there,
paperwork with it now.
but,
I send it and say after you're,
Most
after
people
it's
don't
complete.
even know.
yeah.
What happens is people who have to file with, Board of Health, they require a certificate after 2 years. And I guess Judy goes after them, but, so they think they're done. Well, they don't realize that they have to file with us. And that's-
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Today is my 10-year anniversary working full-time for the commission.
Happy anniversary.